Nate, don't you wish there was like an alternate reality where like instead of like Stars and Stripes the behind the scenes, we also got like a Salute NASCAR like
Dude,
behind the
that
scenes?
would
Oh my
be
God, what I
awesome.
would give for that. I know
Like
that
you're
would
in the
be
studio
amazing.
with yeah, Adrian and Mike and like, all right, let's do little GTO. Yeah.
It's
76 will like that one. Yes. Hey everyone, my name is Jake, and welcome to this special 69th episode of Good Timin.
oh
As
shit.
always on this
Wow, that lined up
Okay, we're
perfectly.
gonna have to go back.
As always, oh no, we're keeping it. As always in this
Wow.
podcast, we're going to be talking about one of our favorite bands, the Beach Boys. And boy, do we have a show for you today because we are covering not one, but two of the albums of all time, Stars and Stripes Volume 1 and Salute NASCAR by Mike Love, Bruce Johnston, and David Marks of the Beach Boys. So some of you may not have expected us to ever cover these records on this podcast, and honestly, neither did I. But we felt as a group that this podcast wouldn't be truly complete without discussing them. So after almost 3 years of doing this show, here we are tonight to tackle these two masterpieces. So joining me tonight, I have my fellow beach and NASCAR lovers, Riley, Matt, and Nate. So as always, I'm happy to have you guys here, and I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on the music we'll be discussing tonight. So before we get into our discussion, I thought it would be good for each of us to share some of our general thoughts on the first album we'll be covering, Stars and Stripes. So do any of you guys want to start us off here?
I think Nate should start off. He's the one that really
Yeah,
pushed for that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've talked about this album at length in I think a few of our past episodes. But the thing that stands out to me about this album primarily is despite it being like a bit of like a duet album, which was like definitely a fad in this era, what really stands out the more I listen to it is it actually to me seems like a celebration of the Beach Boys like harmony singing and like just the richness of their harmonies. Because even though a lot of these songs have new arrangements, the vocals are very front and center. And I mentioned this before too, but in tons of Beach Boys songs, they're recorded with very primitive technology in mono. And so to hear their vocals in these performances recorded with like the latest technology and like a great stereo mix and the greatest studios in Nashville, it's a cool celebration of their music. And I don't necessarily get too hung up on like comparing these versions to the original versions just because I think of it as like a let's get the gang back together, let's just celebrate the legacy. And then, it turns out to basically be Carl's last album with the band. So because of that, it holds an extra amount of weight.
I think ironically I actually have a lot to say about this considering it's one that I've never really been too fond of, and I don't think I'm like still fond of it. You kind of hear a lot of people talk about like the 80s as their like nostalgia act era, and I kind of hard disagree on that. I think they definitely leaned into more like sellout territory, but I don't think it's by any means like nostalgia act. You see them trying a lot of like new production techniques, whether that's with 85 or ironically like even Kokomo, like you still have a lot of like cool stuff going on in that one. Like they're selling out, and they're in like their bright clothes, and Mike Love and Bruce are in their shorts and hats and shit. But like the 90s I think is when they really hard, nostalgia act, whether that's with some of the songs on Summer in Paradise talking about surfing again for the first time in 30 years, and the thing we'll get to later tonight. But I do think it is much less nostalgia act with this one. Like it still is. It's more of a celebration than them kind of like leaning hard into their image. Because if they wanted to, they would have just done NASCAR 3 years earlier. If that's what like them wanting to like truly like nostalgia act it. Um, and I think Nate brings up a good point that a lot of the arrangements are actually pretty cool on here. There's a couple I'm not like really huge on, but then there's other ones where I think the arrangement actually like brings out a lot of like the small musical moments that you don't really hear with the really um not compressed, but like yeah, I guess kind of compressed like sounds of like the
Yeah.
60s when they couldn't, record the individual parts. So it's cool to hear that kind of brought out a little bit more. And I think the voices sound really good. And I think it's an excellent point that you don't really hear them harmonize as much, pretty much from like 70 onwards. You know, it still had a lot of their moments of harmonizing, but like there wasn't a whole album worth of it. And the farther you get into it, actually, like the less you have of it, which I think is kind of interesting. So hearing them harmonize together 30 years on is really cool. And you do hear a lot of Carl in the mix in this album, which I think is cool. Um, in terms of like the actual individual artists, though, it's really, really, really hit or miss for me on some of
That's the
these.
exact words I was going to use too.
You know, some of the songs are like, you know, I can kind of tolerate it. And, you know, some of the two songs where it's like, it's actually pretty good. Um, but then there's that one section of it where it's just like, I wish they didn't make this. I wish they didn't choose this artist, this song. But at the very least, I can appreciate the arrangements and the great harmonies from the band.
So I have a
Yeah.
confession to make. This is the first time this week I had ever listened to this. If I'm being totally honest, I'm not the biggest country music fan. I never really have been. What I like for country is like country rock. Think like Eagles, Michael Nesmith, the First National Band, Graham Parsons, or like more country pop, Dolly Parton, Shania Twain, that kind of stuff.
Glenn Campbell.
Even Glenn came on
Shout out Glenn
kind of hit
Campbell.
or
Oh,
miss with
love
Glenn
Glenn.
You kind of
Campbell.
had to.
I'm kind of hit or miss with Glenn Campbell even. It's just never really been my style of music. I do think that it sounds crisp, and I do think that there are some good arrangement stuff, and I do like some of the songs. I actually prefer usually the ones that the female artists are doing better because that's just kind of the country music I like more. Some of it though is really like just not to my style at all. There's certain artists that I just would never put on, especially because like they made later music that I thought was terrible. So
Yeah.
it's even worse in my eyes. Biggest issue I have with this is I don't think it should have been called the Beach Boys on the top. This should have been like the Nashville salute to the Beach Boys or,
Yep.
country
Grammy salute to the Beach Boys.
tribute to the Beach Boys. Like, I just think it was almost falsely advertised. If I had paid $20 for this CD or whatever a CD used to cost back in 1996, I would have been really upset buying this because it's like I would have felt like this was false advertising. So it's okay, but I'm just kind of like this on it, to be honest.
So for me, this is an album that kind of like Matt, I honestly had never listened to it from start to finish until this week. I definitely had heard individual songs from it here and there, but I just never really had the interest or motivation to sit down and just give it a full listen. I will say right up front that while I have actually gotten into quite a bit of country and like country rock music over the past couple of years, most of the songs and artists that I do like from that genre are from the 60s and 70s. And often the music that came after that, the later country music, I often find it to be a bit too slick or boring for my taste. So the era of country that's mainly represented on this album isn't really my favorite. So I'll just say that right up front. I'll also say that I think, and this kind of goes back to what Matt said too, that releasing this album under the Beach Boys name and not just as a tribute album that features the Beach Boys, I think that was a mistake. I understand that like featuring the band name was more likely to help this thing sell. But to me, it just feels really weird and wrong to see this listed alongside all of the official Beach Boys studio albums when there's no new songs or compositions on here, and the Beach Boys themselves aren't even singing lead on any of the recordings. So I won't spoil my thoughts on the album as a whole, but I will say that as low as my expectations were going into this, there were still a couple of hidden gems on here that I was pleasantly surprised by, which I feel like you can say for a lot of Beach Boys albums. So
Yeah.
I still came away from this feeling glad that I listened to it, even if I do wish that I could have quite a bit of that time back. So I'm curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on this album and which tracks, if any, stood out to you guys. So before we dive into the track list for Stars and Stripes Volume 1, and by the way, there was never a Volume 2, I
That's
wanted to
also
first,
false advertising.
yeah, but I wanted to first refer to our resident 90s Beach Boys expert, Nate, who can give us some more of the background and history surrounding the album. So, Nate, do you want to get into how this record came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different stories that I've heard about like who um, was like the real person pushing the project originally. But I think it's safe to say that this was shortly after Brian and Melinda were married, and this was when Melinda started playing
Mhm.
like a more active role in Brian's career and like encouraging him to get back in the producer's chair and start releasing music again. And so they came into contact with Joe Thomas, who was wanting to do an album of Beach Boys duets. And so they connected with Willie Nelson first in Texas as like the test. And keep in mind that the band hadn't really recorded together in quite a few years at this point. Like even when you think about Still Cruisin', that was sort of White Album-ish in that like a lot of the songs were almost like solo tracks. You take a Brian track, you take a Mike track, you take an Al track, and throw everyone's voice on it. And
It's the best way to describe
Summer
Still Cruising, by the way. Wait,
and Summer in Paradise was, like Mike and Terry Melcher doing most of the heavy lifting, and some of the other guys like are almost sidelined. So they go to Texas to record with Willie Nelson, and not only was it the test to see if the country arrangements and style would work, but it was mostly a test to see like if the band would actually still be able to work together and work as a unit, and if Brian was up to the task of producing. Of course, they had Joe Thomas as co-producer, but Brian was actively involved with creating the arrangements and coaching the musicians. And I don't think Brian was as involved with selecting the guest artists, but he was definitely involved with producing the tracks. And so I'd say for me, this album didn't particularly click or didn't make sense to me until I watched the documentary that was released alongside the album called Nashville Sounds. And I had an image in my mind, and I assume you guys had this image as well, where you sort of picture this album being made by anonymous studio cats, and the Beach Boys are just dragged in to do their vocals like last minute. But the documentary shows that the band was really actively involved, and even though they're not playing their instruments or singing lead, they were there in the studio with the guest artists. Brian was, sitting at the console doing the producing. And so it was very much a team effort and the band reuniting essentially. And yeah, I mean, that's really about it as far as the recording details go. They actually rehearsed for several weeks before they started recording the album. They all got together, and there's really cool footage of the rehearsals in that documentary as well. Really cool footage of Carl directing the musicians and Carl isolating everyone's harmony parts and reteaching the guys their parts. So the documentary is definitely worth a watch and sort of made the album make more sense to me.
Yeah, I meant to watch that actually before we did this episode, but I'm definitely going to check it out just because I've heard the same thing that you said from other people as well, that like the documentary is pretty eye-opening and like seeing the band actually in the studio and Carl kind of leading the guys and Brian at the control board, like you said. So I definitely will check that out. And I honestly think I'll probably find that a lot more interesting to watch than actually like listening to this album. But I do think it would also likely give me a greater appreciation for this album. So,
Oh, believe it or not, that actually aired on Disney Channel. I
oh,
find that,
really?
Wow,
yes, really, in 1996. Now, back
Wow.
then, Disney Channel was a premium channel like HBO. You'd have to pay extra for it.
that's really
yeah,
interesting.
we paid the extra for it, but I lost out on Cartoon Network. That sucked.
The other thing I wanted to quickly mention, because I mentioned that there wasn't the sequel to this never happened, but there were at least plans for that sequel because I read that Brian and I think Tammy Wynette, who's the artist that sings "Stand by Me," which is a great old country song, that she apparently did a duet with Brian that was held back from this album and was meant to appear on a second follow up, but that never happened. I believe it is out there somewhere. I meant to listen to it, but it's a cover of "In My Room." So I'd
Mhm.
encourage you to check that out as well. I definitely am going to listen to it after we finish recording this, but
The Beach Boys have this weird phenomenon within the group itself where they look at what most people would consider successes as failures. Like a big example being Pet Sounds did pretty damn well, even though Brian and the guys kind of viewed it as a failure. And similarly, this album was number 12 on the country charts.
wow.
That's like no joke.
It-
Like that's really like not bad. And the fact that
yeah.
they didn't, I mean, obviously Carl getting sick was probably the biggest thing that prevented the volume two from happening.
Yeah. Quick correction. I think I misspoke. It's not "Stand by Me." "Stand by Your Man." That is the
Yeah,
song.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Stand by me,
It's
the
Yeah.
Stand
Wild
by
"Stand by
Eagle
Your
Trail.
Man." Yeah.
Stand by
Yeah.
Your Man. Yes, and then it was some on some kind of compilation album after she died. It was called Tammy
Mm.
Wynette Remembered, and then it showed up. which I think it should have been on here because it sounds like it would have been a highlight. I haven't heard it, so
It sounds like it would be good though. Picturing her voice on that song, I feel like that would work really well. Because again, one of my issues with this album, I told you guys that I'm not like into this era of country really, like this slick kind of like '90s country. Um, but like the recordings that I like on here, I won't spoil it, but like they are some of the older artists, and she's one of those ones that I think like had such a great voice. So I'd love to hear more artists like that. I actually wrote down just for fun, like if I were to like do a version of this album where it's like, okay, the Beach Boys are gonna sing country songs, like what country singers would I have on it? And some of the ones that I wrote down, kind of more from that '60s to '70s era that I like. Glenn Campbell, I feel like has to be on there.
Yeah, how is he
I
not on
also
here?
I also wrote Ray Price, who had a really great voice. He has a few songs I really like. Johnny Cash singing a Beach Boys song would be really interesting. So I thought
Two
that would be
demonstrations.
cool. Uh, Emmylou Harris for like a
Hmm.
female representation. I think she had a really great voice, so that would be a cool one. And then a few other ones: Ronnie Millsap, Gene Clark, Willie Nelson, who is on here, but I would have him sing like another song. And then Matt's favorite, Michael Nesmith. I think
mm.
had a really unique and distinctive voice. So I think those are some names that I would have liked to like do on like a volume two, or maybe they leaned heavier into the '60s and '70s guys. So.
I think like one of the big problems with country is like a genre in general. Like, I mean, I have a lot of problems with the genre. I just don't, it does not mix well with me. But like, I think something that I don't like is that, there's kind of a feel like it feels like you kind of have to have like a Southern accent to sing country. When I feel like that in a way is kind of true, but like also not. Like, it doesn't need to be a pure Southern accent. If you fit the music, you fit the music. And I think there's a couple of guys on here where like, ironically, I don't really think they have a Southern accent, but and I'm like, is this really even country? And then, and I'm thinking of like one song in particular. I already know I texted Jake about that. Um, but I'm talking on my ass, man. I don't really know country music, so who knows?
Ness singing would be interesting. He'd probably pick something really out there. Knowing how he was, he'd pick something really out there to do.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
I just don't like when it feels forced. That's my thing. Because there are guys in country where, like, yeah, maybe, there's different degrees of it where, like, maybe there's a heavier accent, and then there's other
Yeah,
ones where, like, it's less noticeable. Or maybe if, like, you are used to hearing the accent, you don't even notice it anymore. But there's definitely guys I listen to that I wouldn't say don't even really have that strong of an accent or anything. So I don't think that that's necessarily true. But I don't like when I feel like they're really, like, emphasizing it, like, I'm a country boy. And, like,
that's exactly what I mean, though.
there's a
Like,
few songs on here where I feel that way listening to it, and I hate it. So it's nothing against the accent. It's more like stop trying to like
it's
stop
not.
making it so forced. I don't
That's
know.
exactly what I mean. It's not necessarily the accent itself. It's when you're forcing it, where you're like, you're really leaning into that side of it, and I think it just kind of ruins it. And then on top
Yeah.
of that, you have the over the top slick production, where I feel like country
Oh
as a
yeah.
genre is supposed to be not small production, but a bit more raw and not slick. That
Right.
kind of defeats the purpose.
Right.
Well, I
Well,
think
like
there's
the
also
outlaw country, and like, and I'm okay with the elaborate arrangements. It's just once we got to like the '80s for country, things started getting really slick. And there's like a few songs I like from that era, but like really once you get like into the later '80s and '90s, to be fair, that's that era of music where like even like the regular top 40 charts, I start losing interested. But like especially like country around that time, I just find a lot of it very just like, like it's just kind of there. And then don't even get me started on today's mainstream country, but.
yeah, I think there could be a distinction made between like modern country, bro country, country pop, and like I think kind of like more the old school country kind of be shifted more to like bluegrass and Americana is what you're looking
For
for
sure. There,
nowadays.
there's definitely different branches of it. So I feel like you have to distinguish them. So,
Yeah, because I mean, whatever passes as country now, the last time I listened to country radio was when it was Body Like a Back Road and Cruise and all that stuff. I just couldn't stand it anymore, and then I just stopped listening to the radio.
Applebee's on a date night.
And what's is that the it was meant to be? It'll be. Remember that song?
See, they all sound so similar. It's like that goes right into it. Yeah, nope, different song.
Yeah, it's like in one ear out the other because it's like
Yeah,
there's videos you can find online that like have all the like newer country. It's like
yeah.
10 songs together. It sounds like the same damn thing.
The
It's
same
like
like DNA. Yeah.
Well, a
All
lot of
right.
that is definitely like an outgrowth of like folk music where melodies and chord progressions are like repurposed
Yeah.
and it's like a American songbook kind of thing. But
Hmm.
I hear you guys with all the criticisms you have of country are things that I definitely can like relate to or like have
Hmm.
thoughts I've had before. but I'm also just very much like immersed in it more than I was in the past, just through like working with some country artists and stuff. So I think my
Hmm.
perspective has shifted a little bit.
Hmm.
But I guess like one thought I'd add that kind of occurred to me, and I've probably said this maybe in this episode even, or definitely in a past one perhaps, but if I really think about it, I would maybe make the case that this album has the like strongest and most consistent production of any of their albums since Sunflower, maybe since Surf's Up. But even
Um,
albums that I love, like Carl and the Passions and Holland, like sonically and engineering wise, are very like murky and have a lot of noise and fuzziness. And to me, from a mixing and engineering perspective, I think this album is just like crystal clear sonically.
but
I hear you.
this is where
Yeah, I
I
hear
think
you.
we're like,
Yeah.
go first, and I'll say my
No,
piece.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, I hear you on that. I totally get what you're saying, like the sonic element of it. But like,
I should be
I'm more of
specific and
like,
probably say the best engineering
right,
and
right,
maybe
right,
not
right, right.
best production.
That's what I'm saying too. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the engineering. I totally hear you there. I am more into like the arrangements and stuff. And for me, like this doesn't even touch like Surfs Up and and even Love You and all that. But definitely hear you though from like the engineering. And I'm sure like, as a producer yourself, you definitely have a better perspective on that than we do. But just my opinion.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about the engineering, but like I think things can be well engineered and also like kind of like have cool things going on. Like I think Steely Dan comes to mind, where like I listen to that and it's extremely well engineered, but there's also cool things going on. This to me is I think just a little slick in that respect, where like I prefer kind of the raw
Yeah.
grittiness of I Love You or like a Holland more. But again, different strokes.
All right, so let's get into the track by track for Stars and Stripes. So, Nate, do you kind of want to lead us with the first track, Don't Worry Baby, which is sung by Lori Morgan on this album?
Yeah, I think this is a great start. Like for me, once I finally listened to this album with an open mind, and this was the opening track, I was like, oh boy, we're really in for something good because the band's harmonies are so present and so rich, and Matt Jardine sounds great on here. Um, and then the lead vocals obviously are really gorgeous too. And so I think this is a very, very well done track in terms of the arrangement's really tasteful. The new updated vocal arrangement is really tasteful, and the lead vocals are amazing as well. So I have no complaints about this one.
For me, this is a pleasant enough cover, and it has some really nice backing harmonies from the boys. I really love how clearly you can hear Carl on this, and you can say that for quite a few of the other tracks on here as well. But for me personally, this one just kind of lacks the magic of the original recording, both in the production and also just the lead vocals from Lori. I think she sings the song totally fine, but for me, it just has nowhere near the same level of emotion and feeling as when Brian sings it. And also, kind of going back to something we already talked about a little bit, the arrangement here is just a little bit too adult contemporary sounding for my liking. So for me, this is one of those cases where my issue is less about the cover necessarily being bad because I think the cover is totally like serviceable. But it's more about just the fact that like the original recording is just like so damn like incredible, and this just doesn't even like come close to it. So I think it's a decent, like a pleasant start to the album. And like after getting through the whole album, I would say this is probably in like the top half of the tracks for me, but it's still not one I really see myself coming back to much. So
I would say, okay, not as good as the original. Big highlight for me though, because I think it's sung beautifully. This is kind of more the country music I like. So this is kind of where me and you defer, Jake, because like I actually kind of like this, like adult contemporary, strawberry wine, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's right in my alley, and I actually really like it. And I like the more female country vocals. So for me, this is actually a big highlight. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I
mhm.
think it's fine. Like Jake said, it's really inoffensive. I think there's some stuff on here that is not a great showing of country music plus the Beach Boys that really makes it a bad, like a hard to listen experience. It's fine. It's kind of like the Grammy salute to the Beach Boys minus the pentatonics. It's like it's just a solid cover. I like what it means. I don't like the guitar solo in the middle, though. I really miss the dot 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 dot. One thing I will notice, and I don't know if Nate noticed this, is if you listen in some of the parts, you can actually hear the "Be My Baby" drum beat, which I think is really
Mm.
cool. Something I noticed when I like listened the second time. And
Little
as for this,
Brianism coming through.
yeah, you could tell he probably asked for that. But I mean, I like the singer does a fine job. But it does sound a little too adult contemporary, not to it being bad, just to it kind of just being okay and serviceable. It's probably in the top half, like Jake said, but there's a couple on here that I actually do enjoy. This is one that's just if it's on in the background, I would keep it on. But I think the song is just too good on its own already that a cover is gonna really blow me
Mhm.
away.
There's a really cool
Yeah.
version of Lori Morgan and the Beach Boys performing this when the Beach Boys did their debut at the Grand Ole Opry, and I think it was like 2022,
Mm.
maybe 2023. And so they got back together and did this song, and I think that live version might even be better than this one on here, although it's hard to beat Carl
Mm.
and having Carl on there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
should we go to the next tune?
Yeah, so the next track is Little Deuce Coupe, and this one is sung by James House. I've never heard of this person. Do you have any background on them, Nate? Or
I don't think I heard of him outside of this project either.
okay,
Um,
According to Wikipedia, his biggest hit was "This Is Me Missing You" from 1995.
okay, gotcha. Because I listened to a few songs from like each of these people as like I went through. I was like, oh, I'll check out a couple songs here and there. Like most of them didn't really do anything for me, but like I was just curious. But this was one I didn't really even dive that deep into. So,
yeah, to
Nate, thoughts
me,
on this one?
like we've all sort of alluded to this, but there are some tracks on this album that are like really blow away and really do something new and unique. And this one to me is perhaps the song on the album that's the most just kind of by the numbers and like not too different than the original arrangement or original production at all. It very much keeps in line with like how the band would perform this song on stage, how they always
Hmm.
have. And so when I think about this album, this one to me is definitely less memorable than some of the other tracks. And some of the other tracks are memorable maybe because they're even worse or, even better. But so yeah, to me this one I just think of as like it's good. It's serviceable. Like I can tap my toes and bop my head along to it, but it's not like my life has changed after hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this one, Nate. I honestly don't have that much to say about it. It just kind of feels pointless to me. It's pretty much the same as the original, like you said. Just this one has more slick and, in my opinion, more stale 90s production. And then you have a country singer, obviously singing the lead vocal. And I think that lead vocal is far inferior to Mike's original vocal, and it doesn't really fit this song well either. There's quite a few like songs in here where I'm like, this doesn't even like I know, like, I get we're putting like country artists on the songs, but like they didn't really do much with the song to make it like country, and like I don't really know if I would like that either. So maybe it's a good thing they didn't mess with them too much, but like I don't know, some of these I just feel like, is it even country? Like what's the point?
Well, and the interesting
Um,
thing I remember from the documentary is that I believe they picked the artist and then the artist picked the songs,
Interesting.
is
Okay.
what I
Huh.
think I remember hearing.
But anyway, a couple of positive things to say about this. I tried to find something good to say about most of these songs. I do kind of dig the guitar tone in this recording. Like I like how the guitar sounds during the little short solo section of the song. And like I said for Don't Worry Baby, I think that the guys' backing vocals sound really good as well. But besides that, I'm pretty much with Nate that like this is a pretty inessential recording, and I don't really see myself coming back to this one again in the future. It just makes me want to hear the original. So.
This is like to steal something from Simon Cowell. This is like the equivalent of musical wallpaper. You put it on, you don't really pay attention to it. It's in one ear, out the other. Like it's fine, but it's not necessary. And this is like the kind of country vocals I don't really like. It's kind of
Mhm.
like very twangy, very
Yeah.
like
Yep.
it sounds like you're just singing your throat like out of this. Like, this is why it's always like this kind of country voice is kind of what has always been hard for me to get into the genre. So it's whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a little bit mean here. I actually like didn't really like this one, and it was because of the vocal. I think that this guy sounds like a fat drunk Elvis impersonator. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be like a dick, but that was my immediate thought is there's like this reggae band that I found out about recently on Instagram about like that does like reggae covers of Zeppelin, and they have an Elvis impersonator singing
Yeah, I
it.
saw that too. I
Exactly
saw
what I pictured when I heard this song.
that.
And like no disrespect to the singer, I'm sure he sounds great in a live setting. in the country. And even the arrangement is pretty cool. Jake's right, the guitar sounds really cool. And I think it kind of reminded me of like the 70s live album from the band in some ways. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
cool. But they do not mix well, and that's the image I had in my head was drunk Elvis impersonator. So
Yeah.
specifically like 70s Fat Elvis. So
Yeah. Who wants to hear a Beach Boys cover?
like listen to that song, and I had to double check just to make sure that this was the one, and then I just listened to it on my phone real quick. I'm like, yep, that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a classic.
All right, so up next we have 409, which is covered by Junior Brown. Again, another name that just like meant nothing to me. So, Nate, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this one is like one of the most special tracks on the album, in my opinion. And it's just like bursting with energy, especially because the original version, which I love, and it's cool in its own kind of like garage way, but in terms of like rock and roll, it's very gentle. The original is very gentle and delicate, and
Mhm.
it's to me it sounds like they're kind of like playing their instruments very lightly and singing very politely. And this version just rips. And what really sold me on this version was in the movie. Um, when the guy is playing his pedal steel guitar solo, and this Junior Brown guy, he like invented his own kind of like guitar, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, that's like a unique to him. And there's just this awesome footage of Brian and Carl and Mike and all the guys are like smiling and laughing and like basically jumping for joy with how cool they think that the guitar sounds, and they were just getting such a kick out of it. So to me, I think this was probably a highlight for them because just in the movie you can tell they're like having such a ball, and that just comes through in the track when I listen to it.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of have similar thoughts up on this one as I do Little Deuce Coupe. I have said before that this is kind of going off of what Nate said, where like the original song, like the original recording, I wish had a little more energy to it, which is why like I love hearing the live versions that the band does of this song, just because like I feel like it brings out that energy that the original studio recording is lacking. For me, this one I do like some of like the rock and roll elements of it. Like Nate said, like you got like the little piano flourishes, which I think are really cool. And then like again, the guitar sounds really cool. I think it has kind of like that steel guitar sound like during the solo, which I think is neat. And that's one of the moments where like I feel like okay, there's an example of like the country actually kind of blending with the song a little bit. Like it's not just a straight up just Beach Boys cover with the country like twang for the vocals. Like there's actually some country elements to like the arrangement here. Um, but yeah, overall, like this one, like it's upbeat, it's energetic, so that's definitely a plus, but it doesn't have like a ton of charm for me. So like this is a song where like I just feel like the charm comes from like the Beach Boys doing it. It's never been my favorite Beach Boys song, as you guys know. But if I am listening to it, I definitely want to hear the Beach Boys doing it, preferably in like a live setting. So this one's okay, but it's definitely not like a highlight of the album for me. I think it's just okay.
I definitely think it's better than the last one. I do
Oh
like
yeah.
the guitar.
Yeah.
I do like the guitar. That sounds pretty cool. It does have a more of a fuller sound because this song I thought has always sounded very thin originally because I know it was recorded like on 2 or 3 track, whatever it was recorded on, and they were still like they hadn't really found their sound yet. So that's cool. But it does feel a little almost methodical, at least with like the vocals. I don't really think it has like not really quite feeling the rawness that I feel like this song should have. It almost sounds too crisp, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me.
Yeah, I think it's a little slick, but I do like some of the elements in it. I thought the opening was kind of cool, with the down down the very surf rock, high treble, reverby guitar riff playing. I kind of wish they did the "She's Real Fine" by 409 before doing that because I kind of feel like it kind of cuts away from it a little bit. Um, and the singer here is kind of like the last one, but definitely leagues better. Like I'm not as focused on that vocal style as much. But I was really caught off guard with the slide guitar solo in the middle. That really, like, for a second, I was like, all right, they're doing the solo, but then I really recognized, like, wait, is that slide guitar? And I thought that was really cool. And it's one of the few moments where I actually rewinded listening on this
Yeah.
album. There's a couple of
I
times
did
that
too.
happened, and I thought that was really cool. But other than the slide guitar, though, I don't think there's anything really worth revisiting here for me.
Yeah. That's pretty much how
This
I felt
one,
too. Yeah.
people tend to think of Carl's love for R&B, but from what I've heard, especially as a young guy, Carl really loved country. And hearing this version makes me hear a lot of the country influence in even the original recording of 409 with those like guitar licks.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Carl was inspired to play guitar by watching Spade Cooley on TV, who was a swing country musician, like Western.
Nate, correct me
Though,
if I'm wrong. Was the singer the one doing the guitar on this?
Yeah. Yeah, the like not to I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but the scene of them doing this in the movie with that guy doing the vocal with his weird makeshift guitar instrument, it was like so cool. And like
Part of me is curious if like rather than this being like an album, if it was like a concert or like, like something where I have a
well,
visual
that was
element.
actually part of it. The documentary finishes with them playing at like the biggest country music festival with
Hmm.
all of the performers
But I
like
mean, like as
live.
like a media experience, like if this was like a concert film or something where you could
Hmm.
see the visual element, like I think I would appreciate this a lot more if I saw like the singer doing the guitar at the same time, or just playing some sort of instrument and blending more than just
Mm-hmm.
I'm really gonna downplay a lot of the actual like effort put into this, but like them lending their voice for like 3 minutes, it's like
Hmm.
I can't just brush it off. I'd actually like visually see it.
All right, so our next song is Long Tall Texan, and this one is sung by Doug Supernaw. When I read that name, I was like, we're just making up people at this point. But Nate, any specific thoughts on this one?
Well, this is another one that I think works extremely well. Because there's a lot of charm with the Beach Boys original version from the concert album, but there's just so much screaming that it's like slightly painful
Hmm.
to listen to. But this was like one of their concert staples for years, and so I always thought it obviously deserved a studio version. And I think they pull it off really well. And I'm not gonna say that I know a whole lot about Doug Supernaw or anything, but I think he pulls off like the humorous nature of the song and clearly isn't like taking it too seriously. And Mike doing some of the cameos with the spoken word stuff is kind of fun. And so to me, this one works really well because it's not just, I mean, it's kind of them redoing something they did in the past, but not really because they did it as a live song and this is them finally doing it as a studio song. So it feels arguably like fresher than some of the other
Hmm.
tracks that you've heard them
Hmm.
do a million times.
Yeah, for me, of all of the covers on this album, I feel like this is the one that actually best fits the whole concept of the album. Mostly because the song itself already has like a country sound and theme, unlike pretty much all of the other like Beach Boys songs that are covered on here. Yes, it's a little bit ironic that this song isn't a Beach Boys original. But that said, I still think that this cover is one of the more like successful attempts on the album to blend the Beach Boys with contemporary country artists. So like Nate said, I think that Doug gives us a pretty spirited and loose lead vocal. He sounds like he's having a lot of fun singing it. And I also do really like the boys' backing vocals on this and the little interjections that Mike makes. You know, he says a little thing at the end. He's like, "My horse," and then Doug's like, "Huh?" I think that was kind of funny. I'm just picturing like Mike at the microphone saying that. So, yeah, this is a fun moment on the album. And honestly, like listening to this, there's not a lot of moments that I would describe as like fun. Like most of the time, I'm kind of just waiting for the songs to end. But this one's kind of fun, and I think the lead vocal really is kind of what sells it. So, fun song, fun arrangement. Like Matt has said before, like the song itself is kind of stupid, but this one kind of brings out the fun kind of energy of it. So I think this is one of the more enjoyable moments on the album. It's not something I see myself coming back to too often, but like if it came on the Beach Boys station, which I think is where I first heard this, I'd probably let it play, you know? So,
oh yeah, definitely a successful attempt to turn this to a cover song. And I agree that it's nice to have a studio version of it because it is hard to listen to that concert once because there's all this screaming all over it. I just think the song is corny. This is a song I've always thought was really corny. I just can't get past that. Yeah, yeah, is that your horse? Like, I just think that's like so dumb. Honestly, I really do. It definitely like sounds good, and I think that Doug Supernaw does. You know, he obviously is into it, and he gives a spirited vocal. I just think the song is really corny.
come on. He's catchy though.
It's corny. It's just so
He,
corny though.
he rides in Texas on a bit.
In
Honestly,
the
if it
music
didn't have that
video,
part of the chorus, I would like it a lot more. I just can't get past the yeah, yeah. I just think
Yeah,
it's
yeah, is
it
that
just
my
it just
horse?
like takes me out of the song. It just feels like it was like just almost thrown as an afterthought.
the
I
music video for this one has some of the guys, I can't remember who, but some of them are like riding horses and wearing sombreros and cowboy hats and stuff. It's a
Oh
trip.
wow.
I always forget the Beach Boys do this song. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's
Mm.
only when I actually see it that like, oh yeah, this is when they did. I'm glad they did it though, because like retrospectively, like if I, actually remember the song, it would be like it would be really I'd be really shocked if they didn't do this one. I feel like this one fits the concept the most, as I think Jake
Yep.
said. And it is really fun to listen. I don't think there's a song like this where I really have a preference which one over the other. So like if it came on, it would come on. I would listen to it. It is a lot of fun. I think the guy does a good job, and the band really sound like they're having fun doing this song compared to some of the other
Mhm.
ones on here. Like I mean, I never actually watched the Nashville Sounds documentary, so I'm sure they had a lot of fun recording this. But like you really hear the energy in this one, and I think the guy actually I think this is where that quote unquote drunk Elvis voice would suits the song because it is a lot of fun, and it is one that I think I would put higher up on this list just because it just fits the concept and the performance is great and it is just a good time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever revisit it like a lot, but I would
Mhm.
probably listen to it on this album if I ever like stumbled on this album again.
All right. The next track on the album is I Get Around, and this one is sung by Sawyer Brown. I'm gonna just get my thoughts out of the way on this one because I don't have much to say. I don't care for the lead vocals at all on this. I think he sounds drunk and constipated, and it really annoyed the shit out of me listening to it. So, for me, it's like the best thing I can say is it's better than the Salute NASCAR version. But besides that, like, yeah, this is not something I need to hear again. I don't think he sounds good on it. So,
Yeah, I guess I put this one probably closer to the bottom of the list in terms of going from like worst to best. For me, it's not like offensively bad. I just feel really similarly about this one as I do with the Little Deuce Coupe, where it's played very similarly to how they always played it live.
mhm.
There's nothing too like new or like no big twist on the arrangement or the production. So at best, I'd say it's like serviceable and not bad, just not super memorable or not super moving. But again, it's something I could tap my toe to or bob my head to.
I think this song best exemplifies like Pointless because I think the original is like one of the greatest songs of all time. It's perfect. This just it's the production isn't terrible, but it's kind of slick, and the vocal is like the Scott Stapp school of like, "Ooh," like all in the throat, and it just doesn't need that, and I just don't care for it. It's such an affected vocal that I think it tarnishes the whole thing, honestly.
The guy sounds like he's like always just about out of breath. Like he like
Yeah.
he's just and Jake, you said it better, constipated.
Like he
But
sounds like
like
he's put, yeah,
yeah, like it sounds like he's like has no room left in his lungs. And I feel like they kind of did this one because they had to. I Get
yeah,
Around is just such a
yeah,
big song from them. It was one of their number ones. And I know you said the artist picked the song, but it's like I feel like they selected this guy and he's just kind of like, yeah, I'll do this one. And it's just,
yeah.
this song is built on the harmonies, not the lead vocal. The lead vocal is, yeah, is kind of more of like a bridge for me. Like it's just, it's not really there anyways. It's just, I don't know. They just had to do it, and it really is thrown together. And like honestly, I think this is almost maybe as good as the Beach Boys NASCAR one, which is just saying a lot for me because this is one of my favorite songs in general. So
Yeah, this is one where like I feel like I'm glad that like the like arrangement is so like straightforward and just like kind of like again kind of pointless because like if it was like an interesting like cool sounding arrangement, I'd just be annoyed because this guy's vocals would ruin it for me. Like this song does not need that type of like vocal on it. It doesn't add anything. If anything, it's just detracting from the song. So
well,
like
the
yeah,
song is
like Riley said, I feel like he was like, okay, we're doing a Beach Boys song. All right, well. I get around. Like I just
It's almost like you take I Get Around and you put it's like a country meets like post grunge thing going on. It's
I
like
don't know. I mean, the I Get Around arrangement on the the original single and all summer long is a complex arrangement. It's so tight and pieced together like a puzzle that like if you changed any bit of it, it would probably suck. Even down to
yeah.
the hand claps, and you hear it on this one. So it's just like this one, it doesn't fit like you're doing it because you have to. Like if you wanted to do a country song, do like Cotton Fields or something. I'm
See,
surprised.
that's not obvious enough though for the U.S.
Well,
market.
yeah, I know
Yeah.
that. But, it's like
Yeah.
it's like you doing I Get Around. Like if you change any part of it, it's not really the song anymore. It's so tight.
I don't know if I even want to hear somebody on here do Cotton Fields because I like
See,
the
like
the
if we had our way, like you made like a for the fans Beach Boy like country album, you could do like Hold On Dear Brother and like
Yeah.
Leaving This Town and some of those songs, give them kind of a country. I mean, hell, California Mike Big Sur. I mean,
Yeah.
that already has a country sound to it a bit. So
Pretty much all
but
of albums.
unfortunately this is more of like a for the masses thing. So a song like Cotton Fields would never be considered, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So,
and I Get Around. You kind of have to do it. It's on literally every compilation ever. It's on NASCAR. So
yeah. Give me a country cover or Take a Load Off Your Feet.
I wouldn't listen to it.
Take a load off your feet, Pete. All right, the next song is Be True to Your School, and this one is sung by Toby Keith. Again, I'm just going to get my thoughts out of the way because I don't have that much to say. I think this is a pretty pointless and just very safe cover of a song that I've never been the most enthusiastic about to begin with. So I'll take Be True to Your Bud literally any day over this. So,
So yeah, this one, well, let me get this thought out of the way first. I think this album starts pretty damn strong and it finishes really strong. But for me, the middle, it like
mhm.
loses a little bit of its energy and momentum and it just sort of drags through the middle. Even though all the songs are upbeat, it just starts to feel a little like the same thing over and over again, a little
Yeah.
sluggish. And you
Yeah.
guys know I actually like this album, but that's just me being like as objective as I can. And so for me, this is like when I get to this song, that feeling really starts to like sink in. But with that said, I had an interesting like moment with this track recently. So my wife's grandma is like a huge Toby Keith fan, and she's like been to a bunch of his shows, and his music like means a lot to her, and she's always talking about Toby Keith. So the other night I was like, "Hey, you know that Toby Keith and the Beach Boys like recorded a song together, right?" Like and I told her about it and sent her the video of them performing it, and she was like so in love with it. She was texting me about how much she loved it and how much she enjoyed it and how she watched it over and over again. So her like the pure joy that it gave her kind of like gave me a new perspective on this particular track and definitely made me give it a second listen and just kind of that experience made me smile. And then, sort of like how Jake said, like trying to find positives. One thing I'll say about this is, to me, the album version of Be True to Your School is sort of, I feel about it the way I do about 409. Like it's played very gently and politely, which is part of the Beach Boys' charm. But some of these rock and roll songs need a bit more oomph. And I'd say the 45 version is actually at like the other side of the spectrum where it's like almost like overblown and overloaded with ideas and there's like so much happening at once to the point where the track is almost like straight up distorted. And I think this version finally like strikes a balance in the middle of those two ends of the spectrum where it's has some grit and it has some punch and it's driving, but it's not just like an explosion of wall of sound, which don't get me wrong, you guys know I love, but I do think it strikes a really good middle ground between the I always say the album version's like a middle school dance and the 45 version's like a manic football game, and this version's kind of in the middle.
I just think this is lethargic, honestly. It's like, okay, so this is a song that I've always been kind of like this song, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to do the 6-7 thing. I'm just I've been kind of like half and half with it. In that I liked the 45 version better, but it's never been a song I've been like over the moon about. And this, I don't know, it's just like it's an upbeat song, but it just feels like slow. Like I'm not the only one that feels like it takes forever, right? It's just like it just doesn't have the energy for me. I don't, and Toby Keith's never been an artist I've been crazy about either, so it's just like, nah.
I think I'm the biggest Be True to Your School fan out of all of us, and it's I actually love the album version more than the 45. I like it because of how stripped back it is and how raw rock and roll it is, and you really hear the harmonies, and it brings out the chord progression and just the melody of the song. And I think this is the exact opposite of that. And I think that how, a lot of Be True to Your School haters hear Be True to Your School, I kind of get it because that's how I hear it with this version of the song. And I don't know. I don't like it. It really it didn't ruin the song for me, but how some people who don't like the song hear it, that's how I see this version. And I don't like the chugging guitars in the intro and the soaring guitars throughout. It's like it kind
Yeah.
of makes what was like a really charming song and takes away all the charm.
Yeah, it's what Matt said. It's like lethargic. Like this was definitely like probably the song I was like the most like bored like on the album. Like I'm like, man, like I hope it gets better after this because like this is starting to really drag.
Those
So
like I'll make a better metaphor because I actually kind of like the show Full House. You know those guys who are like really into metal and they're like, "This is real rock and roll."
yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
I see it. I think that's a much better metaphor because it just takes away all the charm. It's like I really love this song. It's one of my guilty pleasures is liking Be True to Your School.
And be true to your bud.
That goes without saying, Jake.
Well, yeah, you know, it's funny you
That would
mentioned
have
it.
been a hell of a country cover.
Yeah, actually, honestly, I'd rather
Be
hear
true
that.
to your bud. Yeah. So in the interest of time, we're gonna knock out the next two here, which are "Fun, Fun, Fun" by Ricky Van Shelton, and then "Help Me, Rhonda," which has Graham Brown on vocals. So for "Fun, Fun, Fun," I do like the guitar tone and the solo on this one. It kind of has like that live energy, like when the band would play the song live, that I really like. But besides that, this one kind of again just kind of feels like by the numbers, like it's fun, 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 but like in the studio and like kind of extra slick. So like doesn't do a whole lot for me. And then the Help Me Rhonda one, I just really miss out like badly on this one. Like I've said about Fun, Fun, Fun and some of the other tracks, I do really dig the guitar tone on this one, but otherwise this one just really lacks a lot of like the feeling and the soul of the original for me. That original, Brian Wilson production with Al's great lead vocals. So both of these tracks are pretty much like inessential to me. I don't think they're terrible, but they just kind of exist. So
Yeah, I can get through these two in basically one thought as well. I'd say Fun 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 actually works pretty well. Because like at its roots it has a lot of that like simple rock and roll feeling, which is largely derived from country music. And all those surf licks are played really well and the drums and the bass and everything feels like it's really moving and grooving. So this one to me pretty cool. I can't say it's the most memorable, but it's a good vibe and it works well for the project. But then Help Me Rhonda is the only I think it's really the only track on this album that like I would have to be honest and say like really doesn't work for me. So much of Help Me Rhonda comes from that like great swing shuffle kind of feel that it has, and trying to make it into something that's like a straight beat for me just like really messes with the melody too much and messes with the feel of the song and just doesn't work with the way that it's meant to be sung and played. And so yeah, for me, Help Me Rhonda is the only one on here that like I would say, yep, straight up, this doesn't work for me.
So I would say I don't mind the fun, 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 but I just don't really like the guy's vocal cadence. It just sounds weird. Help Me Rhonda, it's fine. It's there. I don't mind it that much, but I wouldn't go back to it.
I Fun, fun, fun. Very similar thoughts. It is a little too slick, but I like good guitar work. I think the solos and the lead guitar is really cool on it. Kind of reminded me of the Nebworth version a little bit with the guitar tones. Um, Honestly though, I know this is not like a wild thing to say, but I really miss Mike's vocal on it. I think this guy is too smooth, and it kind of, in a weird way, would kind of because I know that they're very different voices, but in a similar way, it's like there's a reason Brian never sang fun, fun, fun. And it's because like Mike has this, snarl in his voice. He's very, he's nasally where it's needed, and it just works really well on a song like Fun, Fun, Fun. And this guy's just too slick, and it just doesn't, it kind of seems a little uncanny for me. And but it's a serviceable cover. If I saw this live, like if I saw like a band and that guy was a singer and they did fun, 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 it'd be like, oh shit, they're doing fun, fun, fun. So it's all right. As for Help Me Rhonda, I actually think we already have like a perfect version of like what a country-ish version of Help Me Rhonda would sound like, and it's on the live album from '73, and it has this, it's bluesy, but it still has that swing to it. And when you take that swing away, it's just another song. And you already have, an awesome keyboard solo by Billy Hinsche, and it just has all the country energy that you would need. So when listening to this album, I thought we'd get something similar. And it opens with that little piano part. I'm like, all right, we're gonna get a little bit of that bluesy. And no, it's just like a straightforward like rock cover, and it kind of takes away the charm. But again, it's serviceable. It's fine. They kind of I feel like this is the filler of the album, ironically.
Mhm.
So
So up next we have The Warmth of the Sun, and this one is sung by Willie Nelson, who was one of the few names on this album I was familiar with going into it. Nate, do you want to open up with your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is when, you know, for me, the past few songs, the album kind of takes a big nosedive, and from here on out, I think we're up and away back to the races. And so as soon as this one comes on, it always takes my breath away, and it's always like, oh yeah, Brian Wilson is producing this album. Like it's that element is very easily lost on some of the songs we just spoke about, but it's very like apparent with this one, and so much of his great arranging capability and amazing vocal stacking comes through on this track. So for me, this one is like an A plus in every way. I'd say Willie's lead vocal is really moving and really powerful. The instrumentation, it's like a perfect blend between how the original version has like that 50s doo-wop feel, but it's married with that country and Americana sound with the slide guitar and beautiful orchestration. And of course, the Beach Boys themselves sound incredible on this recording. Some of the best vocals of their whole career, I think, on this track. Maybe not the best of any recording, but up there. And so, yeah, for me, this one's just like a masterpiece level recording.
Yeah, I'm with Nate on this one. This is easily one of the highlights of the album for me, and this is one of the few covers on here that I could actually see myself returning to quite a bit. I think Willie gives us a really restrained but also emotive lead vocal, and I think his voice just suits this song surprisingly well, and it really brings out the feeling and emotion in it. Like Nate mentioned as well, I think that the boys' backing harmonies on this one are really beautiful, and I think that they added the emotion of the recording. I would say that if I were to recommend a single song from this album for somebody to listen to, this would probably be the one I'd pick. Just because, again, it's one of the few moments on here that actually feels genuinely moving to me. And it also stands on its own from the original, which is something that I can't really say about the majority of the covers on this album. So I really wish that the rest of the record sounded like this. Even if they had like Willie like cover a couple of like Brian's other 60s ballads, I think that would have really benefited the album. Honestly, I think it could just use more ballads in general. I think that that would suit the country style a lot more than some of these like more upbeat songs. But yeah, this is definitely a highlight of the album, and I think Willie does a hell of a job on this one. So I love it.
It's going to be popular. I like the arrangement. I don't like Willie Nelson's vocals. I don't know if it's just an acquired taste. I think it almost sounds like he's caterwauling over it. I just don't like it. I'm sorry. This is a me problem. I just don't like his vocals. I've never really listened to Willie Nelson. Isn't he known for not being like a conventionally great singer?
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Maybe that's
more about the feeling with him. Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
that's for me. Like I can feel the feeling, but I don't know. It just sounds like he's not even singing the song through. It sounds like he's cutting off each like what grows into dawn. I don't
yeah.
like that style of
That's
singing. I
just his
really
style.
There's
Like if
a
you've heard
really
other stuff from
funny
him, that's how he sings. So
There's a funny scene in the documentary where Mike is standing in the vocal booth like 6 inches away from Willie Nelson while he's recording, and he's like, "No, sing it like this. What good is the dawn that grow?" And Brian's like, "Stop!" Like Brian's getting embarrassed that Mike is like telling Willie Nelson how to sing. It's
I have a very small tolerance for that style of like kind of talk singing, honestly. Like I said, I think it's a beautiful ratio, but I just don't care for his vocals. I'm sorry. It's just not for me.
yeah, Matt, he has an album called Willie has an album called Stardust where he covers a lot of like kind of like your standard, your standard American tunes. And I like it. I like quite a few of the songs in there, but it is kind of in that style where maybe a little less talky, maybe a little more actual like what you describe as singing, but I still don't think you'd care for it based on your thoughts on this one.
When
So
you say like classic American, do you mean like what Frank Sinatra and like them
like
would
just
do?
classic like standards,
Like
standards.
yeah, like standards to me, if you're gonna sing standards, it's gotta be like Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, like sing it through. Not none of this
I
like
think
talk
he means
singing crap.
like Yankee Doodle kind of standards.
Oh, you
Not
mean
not
like
like
that kind
Yankee
of
Doodle,
serious?
but like that kind of vein of stuff.
That'd be okay. But I'm saying like, 'cause when I'm thinking of like pop standards, and if you're gonna sing pop standards, I want it like Sinatra or Dean Martin or something like that.
Riley, thoughts?
I don't think this, it's great. Sorry. Willie Nelson's, greatest vocal performance, and I think he has a couple of like really fun songs from his catalog. But I think Jake does have a really good point. What makes his performance good is just the feeling of it. Like I think this was meant to happen, and I think, he is the kind of guy to know like what song he would sing really well. And I think it kind of, in some weird way, reminds me of Your Summer Dream, where it's just super stripped back and
Yeah.
atmospheric without having a lot going on. You just have some slight like guitar touches in the back and the harmonies and him singing, and it really, it's performance wise from him. It's no, it's not his best, but it just has so much feeling that it is really like its own version of the song. And yeah, if I was to recommend anything from this album, it probably would be this or one other slow one that we'll get to in a second.
Yeah. But yeah, like he perfectly captures like the melancholy of the song, like the sadness, and I like you said too, I think I could totally see like how he would know like what song would fit his voice, because some of these guys I really feel like they were just freaking picking songs. And I feel like Willie gave it some thought, and he picked one that I honestly like. I think that was the perfect choice. I couldn't think of one he'd do better, to be honest. So I think this was a great selection from him. So all right, so we're gonna knock out the next two here. So the next two tracks are Sloop John B, which is sung by Colin Ray on this album, and I Can Hear Music, which is sung by Kathy Tricoli. So the Sloop John B cover honestly didn't do much for me. This is another one of those songs where like I just don't really understand like including it on a country covers album like this. Like there's nothing really that country about the song. Yes, there's a few fiddles on this arrangement, but like that doesn't really make it country. So like I don't really get why this was included. And then I Can Hear Music. I really like hearing Carl's backing vocals on this one, but I'll be honest, hearing them just makes me really wish that he was singing lead. I think that Kathy does a decent job on this, but she just does not come even close to Carl's vocals. And I think it really just shows how great the original Beach Boys studio recording is, how much Carl elevates that song. So yeah, this is another one of those songs where it's like, again, like it's kind of just like it's a pop song. Like it's not really, there's nothing really that country about it. And especially the arrangement on this one, like listening to it, like she doesn't sound that country. The arrangement really doesn't sound country. And then I looked her up to read more about her, and she basically makes it go contemporary and like Christian music. So like, are we just picking names? Like I just don't like it doesn't really fit with the country vibe, and neither does the next song as well, even though I have much more positive thoughts to say about that one. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Sloop John B and I Can Hear Music covers?
For me, Sloop John B kind of works just given the nature that it's like a folk song and
Yeah.
country music and folk music share a lot of the same lineage. So it works better than some of the other songs. And I do think the guitar work on Sloop John B is pretty impressive. And I like the 12 strings. And like Jake mentioned, there's some cool fiddle parts. And then I Can Hear Music, I think, was probably just done to get Brian on board. They're like, hey, Brian, you can record a Phil Spector cover. But I will say that the original version is obviously Carl's like take on what the arrangement and the production should have been. So it is cool to hear a Brian Wilson produced or Brian Wilson co-produced version of the song and to hear like what his instincts were for building the arrangement. So for that reason, I think it's cool. It's the obligatory Brian Phil Spector cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Soup Jumbie, whatever. I actually quite like I Can Hear Music. Is it as good as Carl's? No, but I think Kathy Trockley does a really good job of singing it, and I like it. Like I said, is it better than Carl's? No, but it's a highlight for me on here.
I don't like Sloop John B. I don't think it's anything special. I don't think I'll ever return to it. But in terms of like how much I kind of despise some of the covers on this album, it was kind of nice. Like I thought the guy's voice was really soft and not super leaning into the country, accent, not accent, but vocal style, I guess. Like,
Wang. Yeah.
yeah, not the twang. He gave a really serviceable vocal, and I think he had the energy for it. I don't think his voice is super powerful, but it's like he did a pretty good job. I kind of liked it. I will never return to it, but I think he did a pretty good job. I Can Hear Music. I hate like the little guitar in the beginning, but then I think the lady singing it actually does a really good job singing it, and I'm part of me is curious if you said that the singers chose, the songs, if maybe she was just a fan of the Spectre version because of who was singing that one. And I think
Hmm.
she really pulled it off really, really well. And I think, Brian definitely had a good job producing a Spectre song. So, that's always a win. I think both of these are like pretty serviceable covers. They're pretty good. I think they do good performances. It's just, it's not special enough that I would prefer it over the other versions out there, especially I Can Hear Music. Although Sloop John B, I think actually could have been more country considering the song's origins. Um, I've heard the Kingston Trio version and it's very raw and just guitar and stuff.
Yeah,
So I think something
yeah.
could have been done. They just didn't do it because, it's kind of taken a new life as a Beach Boys song. So
I Can Hear Music was like the throw Brian a bone track, and this was the throw Al a bone track.
yeah, I
Where's
wanted to
where's
get both of them back after, the early 90s. So.
where's Bruce's bone?
Oh, we didn't get to do. I wrote the songs, so
Well, actually, in a funny way, the last one, because I think he helped with the vocal arrangement on this one.
Ah, okay.
So that was a great segue, actually.
Yeah. So
Don't
this
don't don't
next,
forget me. I'm gonna get a seltzer. Give me a second.
all right.
If I remember correctly, there's some footage in the movie where I think, and again, I haven't watched it in a little bit, but if I recall correctly, I remember Bruce sitting at the piano and like calling out notes for everyone to sing for this one.
All right, so the final track on Stars and Stripes Volume 1 is Caroline No, and this one is sung by Timothy B. Schmidt. So of all the artists featured on this album, this is another one of the names that I was actually familiar with. The main thing that I know Timothy for were for this song "I Can't Tell You Why," which he wrote and sang with the Eagles. And honestly, that song "I Can't Tell You Why" that's one of my favorite Eagles songs and one of my favorite soft rock songs in general. I just think that's like such a gorgeous song and love like the really like mellow, like kind of late night feel of it and the guitar work on that. So really love that song. And knowing what a great voice that he has, I did have higher expectations for this cover than I did for most of the others. And this one definitely does deliver. It's not as good as the original or any live version that I've heard that the band do. But on its own, I think this is a really pretty and moving arrangement. It is a little bit on the slick side, like the rest of the album, but on this one, I really love the use of the strings and the mellow acoustic guitar throughout the song. And I think that Timothy gives it a really emotive and moving lead vocal as well. And similar to With the Warmth of the Sun, this is one of the few recordings on the album that actually did move me when I listened to it. And this is one that I definitely could see myself coming back to from time to time. So even though I think most of the album is pretty forgettable, I will give it a point for at least closing really strong with this track because I think this is another one of those ones where like if somebody asked me like what's a song I should check out from this Stars and Stripes album, I would say probably Warmth of the Sun by Willie Nelson and then this Caroline No cover because both I think are pretty outstanding. So
Yeah, so obviously every single recording on the Pet Sounds album is like groundbreaking technical breakthroughs in the art of recorded music. So what I'm about to say is not meant to take away from like the groundbreaking achievement that Pet Sounds was and that this recording was. But to me, this is the only recording on this album where, depending on the day, I would maybe say that I prefer this version. And for me, it's just whenever I listen to the Beach Boys version, or Brian version, since it was his solo single, I just every single time, as much as I love the song and think it's a perfect recording, I always, before I heard the Stars and Stripes version, like dreamt of hearing what the Beach Boys oohs and ahs and harmonies would sound like on this song. And then to discover that they actually did that on this album was like a great surprise. And to me, this is the only album, or excuse me, only song on the album where, like, I'll be honest, if I listen to this one, particularly the a cappella version, like where it's just the isolated vocals that got leaked on the earlier this year, all those tracks that came out, those harmonies could bring me to tears, man. Like to me, it's just gorgeously arranged, and Carl and Bruce's voice really cut through. And to me, this is the one that has the most Brian Wilson element to it of all the songs on here. Like all of his unique textures and quirks and sounds that he's able to blend, it all comes through on this one for me. So yeah, this one for me is another just 10 out of 10.
yeah, big highlight for me. Sounds gorgeous, very moving. Is it really country?
not
I
even
would
the
argue.
slightest, in my
I would argue
opinion.
no. but it's good. So that's all I care about. And
Yeah.
I really, yeah, definitely a highlight for me. I think it's like, for me, like this album's like bookended. You have like one of the best at the beginning, one of the best at the end, and everything else is kind of like a roller coaster. You just got to hop on for the ride. But no, I really do like it a lot. It's very, very moving, and it's very it's a good listen.
I texted Jake like 3 hours ago. I'm like, I think I said the same thing. It's like, is this even country? This shit's immaculate. And it at first it kind of was like that Sloop John B cover for the first like 40 seconds. It's like, this is like a pretty faithful, fine cover, and then the harmonies drop in at like 55 seconds, and it's just what the fuck. I did not expect the harmonies, and they're doing the parts that were played out by like a lot of the instruments on the original recording, and it's just gorgeous, and the harmonies just don't stop. They stay on, and then for like the last minute, instead of actually getting like dogs barking and like trains coming by, you have just harmonies closing out, and
So haunting.
it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. I don't think it matches the original, but like for a 90s cover, it actually comes pretty fucking close. It's just really, really beautiful. And I don't think I'll listen to this more than the Pet Sounds version, but I do think this is the one song I could really come back to a lot of times. And I think, Willie Nelson's version of Warmth of the Sun is the one I would say that is, the country version. But if there's like a song I would come back to the most, the country version is the best. If there's a song that I will come back to the most, it is probably the Caroline No version. I think the guy that's also doing the lead vocal does a beautiful job too. And you can really tell that Brian arranged it because he did a lot. The opening is like verbatim, just Pet Sounds. So it's gorgeous, man. It's really beautiful. And I'm glad that for the longest time, that was technically the last Beach Boys song.
Yeah.
Yeah, call
It's
me
it's
crazy, but hearing Mike and Carl and Bruce and all the voices intertwined at the end, I'll take that any day over the trains and the dogs.
it's weird to call like Pet Sounds is such an elaborately produced album, so like it's weird to call like any song in it like raw. But the original Caroline No, it feels more raw compared to this one, where this one it's like Caroline No, but like with some extra frosting on the top. But like I like the frosting though, it's good. Like I like the use of the strings in this. I like the fact that like now there's like the backing harmonies. I think that adds something to the song. And again, yes, I prefer the Pet Sounds version. I would take that any day. But like this, considering like that this is a song on this album that has like such a kind of a crappy reputation among the fan base, and like just this weird kind of like thing in the band's history, like this is such a hidden gem. This is like one of those tracks that really shows why you gotta just listen to everything by this band, because you're gonna find some gold in everything.
There's diamonds amongst the shit, dude. It's
Yeah, Riley, that meme where the guy's got the pitchfork where he's digging
yeah.
and the diamond, he's
This is
almost
literally
there,
at
and then
the end.
that's what this is, because it's right at the end of the album. It's like you slog through it, and at the very end, you get this just gorgeous,
Yeah, and it's just so
well,
funny.
guy.
It's not even a country song. I'm so bewildered. Like, there's a couple of songs on here that aren't like super country, but they could fit. Like this is literally just slapped on at the end, like randomly. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so different from the other things, and I'm just so curious because I know that like Brian was working on a lot of stuff around this time with like Andy Paley, and there's an album that we almost got from that. If like
Mhm.
and just I guess not in actuality, but like in like some like atmosphere, like some of that was just lingering around. They just randomly put this shit on there because it does not fit, and it's just so beautiful. Like I really like this
Yeah.
version, and I will be returning to it time and time again because I think it's just gorgeous.
All right, boys.
Let's do
Well,
NASCAR.
it's time, and I'm dressed for the occasion. It is time to salute NASCAR. So I think Nate, you got to kick us off here. So you can give some general thoughts on the album, maybe a little bit of history and background if there is anything, and then we can share our thoughts going into it. So go ahead, Nate.
Well, I'll say this, for quite a few years, I've had this bizarre fascination with these couple albums that Mike and Adrian released in the 90s and 2000s. And I think the reason that they piqued my curiosity so much is just because there's so little information out there about these albums. So the fact that there's so little information, and that especially like now they're on YouTube and stuff, but I remember when I was getting into the Beach Boys, like trying to hunt down these files took months of like DMing people and messaging people and going on weird forums and downloading apps and like all this. I had to jump through so many hoops just to like hear these recordings 10 years ago or so. So like even finding the tracks and finally getting to listen to them felt like such an accomplishment that I think it made me like the music a little more than I would have if it was easy to find back
For
then.
sure.
But anyway, so the history is, and I don't need to get into all the details, but Mike and Adrian Baker had this like on again, off again relationship where they'd be like working together like really closely and really intensely, or like not even working together at all for years. And there was like this weird stop start thing with their relationship. But it kind of makes sense because around this time is when Landy wasn't letting Brian work with Mike anymore, essentially, basically. And so Mike kind of needed like a surrogate Brian. You know, Brian had Russ Titleman and Jeff Lynne and Andy Paley, and Mike ended up doing a lot of stuff with Adrian Baker. So I think a lot of the work that you hear on these albums were done during the spurts that Adrian was in the touring band with the Beach Boys. So I think a lot of this stuff was started in the early 80s and then work continued on it in the early 90s when Adrian was back in the band again. And then I think the final last bit of work was probably done like not to get too depressing or anything, but probably like around the time that Carl was passing, maybe like shortly before or shortly after. I'm not sure the details, but you definitely get the impression from, and we'll sort of lump these together, the Beach Boys Salute NASCAR and the Summertime Cruisin', which is credited to Mike
What a
Love
name.
and Bruce Johnston of the Beach Boys. Like I feel very strongly that these albums are kind of like they sort of scream like, well, what are we gonna do now? Like you can
Yeah.
tell that
Yeah.
that Mike and Bruce and David, who were the Beach Boys at this point, they were the only guys left in the band since Al and Brian left. It seems like they wanted to like continue recording music and releasing music, and they did, but they couldn't really call it the Beach Boys, but it's not really like Mike Love solo either. So they didn't just call it Mike Love. They don't call it the Beach Boys. They came up with all these weird like corporate names, weird vague legal names to credit the albums to. So you have Mike Love, Bruce Johnson, and David Marks of the Beach Boys. You have anyway. So yeah, the only other little tidbits that I asked Adrian, someone who works with Adrian, to give me some details about the albums. Um, Adrian Baker played the vast majority of the instruments you hear and a lot of the backing harmonies as well. But you've got Bruce playing keys on some of the tracks, particularly Don't Worry Baby. Mike Miros, who was the band's keyboardist for a really long time, is playing all over this stuff. And Mike Miros' brother, Gene, actually plays saxophone on some of these tracks, like Kokomo on Summertime Cruisin'. So yeah, Salute NASCAR was sold only in 76 gas stations, and Summertime Cruisin' was sold at car dealerships. And believe it or not, there was actually a third installment in this weird Mike Love, Adrian Baker Fever Dream trilogy. And that third was called Catch a Wave. And it's that one's the only one where it's just credited to Mike Love. And Tom, who works with Adrian, was explaining to me that that one basically like any business could like license that CD and they would like make custom versions of like the CD booklet for whoever the business was that wanted to be selling these Mike Love pseudo Beach Boy albums. So like say it was your local restaurant or I don't know which business is actually tapped in, so to speak, but yeah, it's just this really weird phase that to me I can only best describe as calling it like a weird fever dream because it kind of is the continuation of the Beach Boys recording career, but it's also not. And it lives in this really weird gray area. And
Yeah.
so I guess that sets us up to get into the tracks.
Yeah. Question, I forget if you mentioned it or not. I know you said Bruce is actually on this thing because there's a lot of discussion about like, is anyone other than Mike actually on this thing? Or like Mike and Adrian Baker? Is David on this at all, or is he just in the picture and that's about it?
From what I understand, I think it's likely that he probably contributed some guitar,
Hmm.
but there's like so few details. I literally called the Beach Boys archivist, John Brody, before we started filming today. And I'm like, hey, bro, is there anything you know about these sessions? And he's like, dude, he's like, that's like the only era that even I don't like know a lot about. So there's like such little documentation that it's sort of just what anyone could say other than probably Mike and Adrian themselves would probably be speculation. But from what I've heard from Tom is it sounds like David maybe did a little bit of guitar playing. And you've also got Dean Torrance singing and playing on some of these too.
Mhm. Matt Riley, any brief thoughts before we get into the track list? I know you guys re-listened to this thing, so
Well, I bet Matt only listened to this for the first time now. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I knew
My
it.
first like 3 or 4 times I've listened to it. Um, don't really have a ton to say to be honest with you. It's
they saluted
and
NASCAR.
they did. It's kind of like funny, I guess, in like an ironic way, but I just don't know if I really would if there's anything on there I would really come back to be honest with you. I just think it sounds kind of cheap. Almost like those Sonic commercials they allegedly did, or I think I saw that
Oh
they
yeah, that was
sang
at
for
the same
Sonic.
time.
It just
Adrian Baker producing as well.
I just don't really I don't really know what I can say about it.
It is that weird era of like, the late 90s, early 2000s where companies, because of how cheap CDs are, could release shit and would release shit. You'd have, I remember listening to a CD, and this oddly reminds me of it with my grandfather, of like, Disney characters singing songs from like the 50s and 60s. I remember the first time I heard Summertime Blues was Goofy singing it. And it's like, yeah. So it's like you they're so cheap to release and make, and you literally are like it printed money, even if it was just shit, you could get away with selling it. So what was probably, this fun passion project for Adrian Baker, who I said I'd have thoughts on, to, finally, play Beach Boy, play Frankie Valli, and, have his time to really role play that, for lack of a better term. Um, he's able to do that. And Mike was able to kind of use the Beach Boys name. And I don't want to like say it, but, make a quick buck. And, I don't know how much money they actually made off of this. Probably not a lot, but it's a time where you could release shit because CDs were just so cheap to make. So it's an interesting listen for sure. And it's a great peek into the early, I guess, Mike Love era of the
I thought you were
band.
gonna say a
Yeah,
peek into the mind of Adrian Baker.
No, well, yeah, and my thoughts on that, I'll just get that out of the way. Like, I think he's a talented guy. I think he has a good voice. And, obviously he can play a lot of instruments and record a lot of instruments, which is different from just playing instruments. Recording is a whole separate beast. I remember like when I first learned how to like record guitar, and Nate knows this, kind of pisses you off because you have to be on time and it has to be perfect. And so he's a talented guy, but I think it's just wasted potential. Like he just wanted to LARP Frankie Valli and the Beach Boys, and he could have put that elsewhere into making some really interesting music. But I guess he did make some interesting music. We're gonna
Yeah.
get into that.
Just I won't even go into my thoughts. We'll just go through the track list. But I will say that I've always found it just hilarious that for those of you that don't know, like my other big interest besides music is literally NASCAR. Like that's my thing. I've been watching it for like 15 years now, and I watch every weekend. I've been to a lot of races over the years. It's just a big passion of mine, and it's just really funny to me that my two like interest
what are the odds?
universes intersect on this thing. Like of all things, like this is the crossover. I just think it's really funny. So that's all
I
I have
can't
to say.
imagine your reaction the first time you heard of this.
Oh man, yeah, it was just like I'm trying now that I think about it, when did I first hear this? Like I'm
I don't
trying to
know when
think
I
where I would have like come across, probably on the subreddit, I imagine. So yeah, but I'm sure I knew right away from the cover, like, oh yeah, this is gonna be just pure quality. So yeah. All right, so we're gonna go through this we're gonna go through the tracks in pairs just because I don't know how much we're all gonna have to say about these. So we will open up with, I feel like we gotta like combine the intro here.
We
So
have
we're
to
gonna
talk
say the
about the
the
intro.
intro and I get around. So first of all, the intro. What an intro, man. I don't know like who like was in charge of like, yeah, we have to do an intro for 76 or something. But like, man,
Probably
it is
76.
just, I mean, for me, it's the highlight of the album. I mean, I laugh every time I hear this thing from Mike's like, cool cars and hot fun at the beach. And then it goes right into Bruce with and I'm Bruce Johnston of the Beach Boys, beach lover, NASCAR lover. And then again, like I've mentioned to you guys before we started recording, we've yet to hear anything about NASCAR from Bruce before or since. So not sure how true that is. And then at the end, you get Mike saying, hope you enjoy this recording as much as a checkered flag at Daytona Beach or something like that. So it's just a majestic intro. And then it just goes right into a version of I Get Around. I'll just say I actually played this for my girlfriend just because I was just curious to like get someone that like, someone that's heard the original song, like a handful of times, but like isn't like a diehard like us, just to get her perspective on like, does this sound like complete shit? And I hit play on it and she was like, oh, whoa, like it was like she knew immediately like this does not sound good. So yeah, the intro to I Get Around is not sound good to my ears, and just like Riley said, the production on this thing as a whole just sounds really cheap. And man, does Mike sound nasally, specifically on this recording. Like I know like this was kind of the era where Mike just sounded really nasally, but like man, like it almost sounds like to like a comical degree, the level of nasalness on this. So yeah, yeah, this recording is not good, and but it is really funny, I will say. At least the spoken word intro and the intro I Get Around. So
Yeah, I'm so glad that intro exists. It's like maybe some of my this is a joke, but some of my favorite few moments of recorded audio history. Like Jake said, it makes me laugh every single time. And every single time I drive past a 76, I have to say beach lover, NASCAR lover.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the most uncanny part is they're reading this very like it feels like the script was written by NASCAR in 76, and yet there's this like groovy psychedelic good vibrations
yeah. It's good
pastiche like
vibrations. Yeah,
playing in the background, and like the juxtaposition of those two things is was probably enough to send Brian into psychosis all over again. But yeah, and I've done the same thing where I've like played this album in front of a lot of people. Like I've just always had a curiosity. Like I've also done the same things with like the Jane and Dean Beach Boy covers. Like I've always been really curious, like, oh, if I play these with casual fans, will they no even notice that they're different, or will they be like the same thing that Jake did? And in my experience, some people don't even notice that they're
really.
like, oh, the
Wow.
Beach Boys. And sometimes
Yeah.
people are like, what the fuck? And are like re same reaction. So I've had the gambit of reactions, and I've tested it on probably more people than any sane person would. But anyway, um, this version of I Get Around, yeah, I guess I feel pretty similarly about all the tracks. Like, I think they're very competently produced. They're hitting all the notes and the harmonies. Everything is played like in pitch and in key and in time. And it's like there's not a lot that you can point out as necessarily being bad. It's just hearing half the band, or two or three members at best of the band, singing over like digital MIDI synth programmed parts will just always pale in comparison to like original recordings with the Wrecking Crew and with the original Family band. But
Cousin,
this
friends, and
version's
brothers.
yeah, but this version to me, it's like I'm not offended when I listen to it. Like I've said it a bunch of times tonight, but not memorable, but serviceable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it sucks, but it's it's whatever. It's kind of exactly what you'd expect from like a cheap gas station CD of Beach Boys recordings. Like, could you find better from your local like punk band? 1000%. And could you find better in the original recordings? 1000%. But like, you know, it's whatever. I'm so far into the rabbit hole. I've heard so much shit, I've like actual shit from this band. I've heard so much like great music, and I found so many deep cuts, and I'm so deep into the rabbit hole where it doesn't phase me anymore. It's
Right,
just
right.
like, it's yeah, it's literally what I'd expect from it. But the intro, man, that is the diamond in the rough. That is in the I think we inducted it onto like our worst of the worst album.
Oh, it's on there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
think
on
it's
there.
actually the intro to the worst on the worst album. Um, And it's, again, we are so deep in the rabbit hole that it's so bad that it's so entertaining every time. I think I've listened to that probably more than at least half the catalog from the band,
That's crazy.
which is wild to think about. Like I will sometimes just, like I have this on my Apple Music library. I did that for fun a while back, so like it's on there. Like I go to Beach Boys and this is on there right next to Summer in Paradise. Um, Fitting. And I will listen to it. It's just so funny. If you've never listened to the intro, just the intro is worth getting the CD, because I feel like the CD is probably like what, $5 on eBay. Like,
No, try 15
I
to
don't know how
20.
much it is now.
well, now that we're making it popular, it's whatever. But yeah,
Matt.
and, I get around again. It's I've listened to so much shit from this band that like a crappy.
See, Riley, that's how you know you're deep down the rabbit hole. And like this is like one of your favorite songs of all time, and your
Yep.
reaction isn't even like appalled. You're just like, yeah, like this is what I expected. Like Adrian Baker produced, gas station CD, Mike Love on lead, like, and that's it. Like, yep, this is
Yeah,
it.
like it's like I said, like with the country album, like I kind of didn't really know what to expect listening to I Get Around, so I might be a little bit more shocked. But like when I know the background, I knew it. And I think I've already listened to it before, but it's obviously been a minute. But it's just like whatever. Like it's like it needs to this, and it's gonna be like I don't have similar thoughts to every single song on here. It's like it's well played. It's the mixing isn't awful. It's just kind of literally just copying verbatim with just newer technology and some digital stuff. So it's gonna sound slick, but Adrian Baker, what do you expect?
Matt.
Yeah, no, intro is hilarious, and I think Nate nailed it with like the juxtaposition of like good vibrations in the background, which not only is psychedelic but was so groundbreaking. And then you have this is like the audio equivalent of cashing a check. Because what I mean by that is like you can hear the check being cashed as they're reading the script. It is funny, and I also find it hilarious that David says absolutely not a damn thing. So it's like, what is he? Why is he not saying anything? He's right on the cover. Hilarious, honestly, very hilarious. As far as the song itself goes, it's fine. It definitely sounds like you know what I always found so fascinating about this band? They always are like they embraced all this digital technology early on, and it always sounded bad. It was just funny, it's like their first version of they used the early version of Pro Tools for some reason. It didn't sound very good. This doesn't sound great either. And honestly, like I kind of almost wish I could pull these like MIDI files and like run them through like an NES MIDI thing, because at least then it's going to be more entertaining, and then we can just put the vocals on top of it. It's just fine. It's whatever. And like I told Jake this earlier when I was texting him. Like I think Mike gets a lot of hate. Some of it is deserved, some of it isn't. And I'm kind of been a fan for so long that I'm used to it at this point. But if I could definitely see why some people would be upset by this, because it almost feels like you're cheapening the legacy, if you know what I mean. Because like, oh great, we're using the name to sell a gas station CD and we're just recording the same songs over again. Could you imagine if Ringo Starr did Ringo Starr of the Beatles, salutes cricket or something? You know what I
He
mean? Like
definitely did that though. That's the funny thing. Like Rico would be the one to do that.
but I haven't seen it as much as this, so it's like
The
I'm
Pepsi
like,
commercials or something, like him, he
yeah,
wore like a fucking football
Ringo
shoulder
had,
pads.
but to be fair, Ringo doesn't have as complicated of a legacy
Oh
slash
yeah, no.
relationship with
yeah.
the fan base of he's always been like, other than in like the 70s when he was like drinking too much, but like other than that, like, yeah, that's when Ringo the Fourth came out, so that says
Yeah,
a lot about
exactly.
that
But
era.
like, I don't know. It's just like I don't have a problem with it at this point, but I could definitely see why people do. And that's just I'm gonna say that now, just get out of the way. As far the song is whatever, the intro's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the way the song starts. Round, round, get around, I get around. It's
It's
like
too
so like the
perfect. Like if
vocals
I
are so like artificial. Like
yeah.
all right, so the next two tracks on Salute NASCAR are Little Deuce Coupe and Little Old Lady from Pasadena. So Little Deuce Coupe, I read a YouTube comment that made me laugh. It just said, I love this version for how unapologetically awful it is. That made me laugh. But on this one, I do think Mike's vocal is a little more tolerable, like the level of nasalness than it is on I Get Around. And I also think that the arrangement on this one is a lot more kind of like straightforward to the original sound, just because the original kind of had a more simple arrangement as well. Where Where I Get Around is like, one of those like greatest songs of all time. So it's like you really got to get it right. And I think that their version on this one did not. Whereas Little Deuce Coupe, it just feels a lot more straightforward, a lot more inoffensive to me. It just kind of exists. And then as for Little Old Lady from Pasadena, this is honestly one of the more tolerable moments on the album for me. I don't think it sounds like especially great. But I do think that like since the Beach Boys don't really have like a true studio version of this song to compare it to, it does feel a bit more unique and fresh than most of the other recordings here. I do think that most of my enjoyment from this song comes more from the song itself, like being really catchy and fun versus like what this album is bringing out of it. But overall, I would say it's one of the more like serviceable moments on the album, and I could see how like someone like wouldn't mind like hearing this, but neither of these tracks are essential by any means.
Yeah, the way I feel about Little Deuce Coupe on this one is actually pretty similar to the last album, where it's pretty darn similar to the way they always played it live, and you're not hearing like any kind of reinvention or anything. But something I've always actually liked about this album as a whole is there's not a whole lot of like pristine audio or footage from like the late 90s, early 2000s Beach Boys. There's some stuff out there, but not a lot. And so for me, this album's kind of like a documentation of what the band sounded like at that stage. So it's kind of like a historically interesting, for that reason alone, is just like out of curiosity. It's like, oh, I wonder what the Beach Boys sounded like in 1998. Well, there you go. Um, but Little Old Lady from Pasadena, I really like. And for me, like this album, I'm gonna sound batshit insane for saying this, but I actually think this album, on the two songs that are like new recordings that are live staples for the band, but ones that this is the studio debut, I think this album actually sounds like pretty fresh. And I don't even hate like the late 80s, 90s like drum sounds or like the slickness. Because it's just something new, and I'm not comparing it. I mean, you could compare it to the originals. Um, like obviously, Little Old Lady, the original Jane and Dean version, is like a super sophisticated recording with a huge brass section and percussion and strings and the whole wall of sound thing. This is obviously a bit more stripped back. But it's fun, and I like hearing. I always enjoy hearing Dean sing with the Beach Boys, and hearing him wail away on the falsettos. Always entertaining, even if you might plug your ears here and there. So yeah, I actually think the Little Old Lady on this one feels pretty fresh and kind of rocks out.
It's definitely not the worst one on here. Probably the best. It's not saying a lot. Doesn't beat the intro. But I kind of wish, like we got more covers on here than just
Yes. Yeah.
either, more covers or bigger deep cuts. Because, I could just buy a greatest hits CD if I wanted to hear I Get Around. Like if and we'll get to this one later, but like we have Ballad of Old Betsy on here. I did not expect that one. So, if we got like a couple of like crazier deep cuts, like Our Car Club or something, I know they wanted to go with the whole like car image for NASCAR, and it's literally Little Deuce Coupe Volume 2, just re-recorded in the 90s, which I think is funny. But I mean, Little Deuce Coupe is whatever. Really it's just a by the numbers cover, which I can say for a lot of these. But Little Old Lady from Pasadena is pretty cool to hear from the 90s Beach Boys. But it kind of makes me wish we got an original version by the band back in like the 60s, considering all that, Brian helped out with Jan and Dean. It would have been fun to kind of get something like that by the Beach Boys. So
There is one on the first live quote unquote album, right? I think isn't there a Little Old Lady from Pasadena on there?
Yeah,
But that's with like all the loud chatter.
screaming.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
screaming. Yeah.
The fact
Nah.
that that album hit number one, I still don't understand. That was the first number one album,
I
but
think it
I
was
guess
I think it was timing, just timing.
next to I
I,
Get Around as a single and very
yeah,
easy.
I guess it just shows how popular this band was. Yeah, Lil Deuce Coupe definitely more tolerable than I Get Around because it's not quite as nasal. Little old lady from Pasadena definitely a highlight because as been mentioned before, there was never a studio version of it, I don't think, and so it's kind of cool to hear a studio version of it. Even if it does sound kind of 90s, and I guess like I like a lot of 90s music. I just don't know what it was with this band. I just don't know if they really transitioned their sound great in the 90s. That's the whole thing. because there have been like legacy artists that kind of went and did, kind of try to experiment with the sound later on and came up with some cool stuff. But I don't know what it was with this band. This didn't, I think they probably didn't pick the best producers or whatever, but yeah, it's fine.
All right, so the next two tracks on here are 409 and Shutdown. For 409, I just wrote, why does Mike sound like that on the chorus? I don't like how he sings giddy up on this. He sounds like I don't know if it's like a half whisper, but like I just don't like the way he's like saying it. Like he's like giddy up, like he's like right in your face. Like don't love that. And then Shutdown, I just feel like was like very just like pointless again, just like by the numbers, like here's Shutdown, like it has to be on here because it's a car song. But it's tolerable. I will say like Shutdown's another one that's like never been like a huge favorite of mine, but like, on this one gives it a little energy and I think hearing this song live, this is definitely one I kind of have similar thoughts to 409. I definitely like hearing it live more than I do like necessarily the studio version, but on this album, I think it's passable. It's just something that I don't think needed to exist though. So those are my thoughts on those two.
Yeah, I'd say like passable is the perfect description for both of these. Sort of like we were saying earlier, like everything's really played well and for the most part sung well. Although I hear what you're saying, Jake, about the some of Mike's singing on the tracks.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, like for me, they are, again, really cool for being basically like historical documents of what the band sounded like at the time. And like if I'm ever like I have my big Beach Boys playlist that has pretty much everything they've recorded or everything I've been able to get my hands on. And if like this one or the other one like comes up on shuffle, I probably wouldn't skip it, but I would probably rarely seek it out too at the same time.
Yeah, I think 409 is just Jake. I see you listen to the next one. Uh,
No, I'm listening to 409 because I want to hear Mike's vocal in that part again.
I think it's funny, 409 out of all the originals, I actually think is the best one, but it is because that song was pretty raw initially. I like that they have the car in the beginning. I like that you could kind of hear the engine revving in the middle of the song.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a nice touch.
but I think the one thing I don't really like is, they didn't change anything. And I think if there was a song they honestly could have changed, it would have been 409 because that is one of their earliest ones. And they have had so much time to really just, spice it up. And then Adrian Baker doing the guitar solo, probably, uh, didn't do anything special. Like he played it note for note. And I feel like, I don't know, you could have put a little bit of that, like, I don't know, the energy from the initial, from the Stars and Stripes album. Like do something with it to make it more energetic. Don't just copy it verbatim because it's just so boring.
They're both fine. I don't think it's a 90s redo of 409 and Shutdown. It's not the most offensive redo they did in the 90s or other things that they did that weren't the best, but it's just kind of there. Not much to say about it.
Yeah. And then any thoughts on Shutdown, Matt, or not really?
Um, I did appreciate hearing a more like fleshed out version of the sax solo, I guess.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not it's not just the same
Bare fucking minimum.
brr, 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 brr. Honestly, I can't play the saxophone worth a damn, but I want to try my hand at that. I probably could do a decent job with it.
All right, so the next two tracks on the album are Little GTO and Ballad of Old Betsy. So Little GTO is a cover of a song by Ronnie and the Daytonas. I'm pretty sure that was a one-hit wonder, one of those many like kind of like, surf hits around the time, kind of trying to sound like the Beach Boys. This is another one of the more like tolerable songs on the album for me, and dare I say, somewhat enjoyable. I don't think the song is anything like too special, but I'll admit that it is kind of catchy and fun. I like the wah 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 part. I think that's pretty catchy. And I think that Mike gives this one a pretty solid lead vocal on as well compared to like a lot of his other vocals on the album, which I said, feel very nasally. But like this one, I feel like it fits his 90s voice pretty well. Again, nothing to write home about, but if you're looking for something that isn't like entirely pointless or offensive on this album, this would probably be my pick. I think it's a decent enough cover. And like if I heard this one on the Beach Boys station, they play pretty much everything. And if they threw this on there, I'd probably keep it on. So I think it's a passable cover. And then Ballad of Betsy, call me crazy, but I don't think this one's that bad. The production's a bit dated, but I feel like the arrangement and the instrumentation, kind of like the more mellow sound of it, I feel like it suits the song well, kind of gives a different take on it. And I also think that Mike gives a pretty good lead vocal on this one as well. Definitely like a lot stronger than a lot of his other vocals around this era. So I kind of like this one in the same way that I like some of the more mellow tracks on Summer in Paradise. And for that reason, I would say this is also one of the stronger tracks, if you can call it that, on Salute NASCAR. So I think this is the best cover on the album, and I think it's kind of a pleasant surprise, like Riley said, that a song like this was even included, because I feel like there were probably some more obvious car songs they could have picked, but they went with this relative, deep cut from Little Deuce Coupe.
You
So
know
I think
Adrian
both,
Baker picked that one though.
yeah. Yeah, but I think these are two of the more definitely, if you can call them enjoyable, they're two of the more enjoyable moments on the album. So,
Yeah, for me, it's funny. Like Stars and Stripes, I always, as I described, I feel like the beginning and the end are really strong and captivating, and if not gorgeous, and the middle has that slump. And for me, this album's actually the opposite, where like the beginning and the end are just kind of so-so, but for me, it actually really picks up steam and gets like a lot more enjoyable in the middle for whatever reason. I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff packed in the middle. Um, so yeah, Little GTO is another song that the Beach Boys, I'm sure they played it here and there in the 60s, but they started playing it pretty consistently in the mid 80s, and they kind of played it on and off up until probably like 2011, maybe even like 2013. So it would not be unusual to hear this performed by the band live, and therefore I think it's really cool to have a studio version. And of everything on here, I think this one actually has the most like balls or the most like kind of testosterone
Yeah.
to it. Like good driving drum beat and the guitars and the bass are really chugging away and Mike's lead vocal is really spirited and like Jake said the falsetto stuff in the chorus is executed perfectly. So this is one that I would like come back to actually like all the time. And if
Yeah.
I had my own version of like Summer in Paradise or my own version of this or like frankly this might sound really insane, but heck, I would have maybe even put this out as like a Beach Boys single at this time because like
yeah,
why not?
why
Like
not? Yeah.
obviously it was sad that Carl passed away and everything, but like if they were going to continue on, I think this is a really good recording. Hell, I would have maybe done this as an A side and Ballad of Old Betsy as a B side because
Yeah.
yeah, like Jake said, that Ballad of Old Betsy is really reminiscent of like the slower songs on Summer in Paradise.
Yeah.
And Mike's a damn good singer. And it's like it's interesting to hear like the original version has Brian's amazing falsetto. And this one, it's kind of Mike beginning to have a little bit of that like old man voice.
Hmm.
And so the song's already very like has this like longing melancholy vibe. So it works really well. And I think the production's a little bit more like understated on this one. You're not hearing like a ton of huge big gimmicks and synthesizers. It's pretty minimal. So these two tracks to me really stand out as being very strong
Yeah.
for this album.
Mm.
I was muted, my
Yeah.
bad. These are probably the two most exciting tracks. Little GTO is a song that they never did before. I know Nate, you said they did it live in the 80s and 90s. So I think this one has a lot of energy. I like the wah wah wah. I think that's a good use of Adrian Baker's falsetto. Um, yeah, it's definitely exciting to hear that. And like I said earlier, I think they should have done more covers, even if it was just like just other car songs from the time. I think it would have been more exciting than hearing I Get Around for the billionth time.
Like
Uh,
Hey Little Cobra would have been a really good one
I
for
was
this
about to say
album.
anything by like the Ripcords probably would have been easy, especially with Bruce in the
Yeah.
picture.
Give
Yeah.
Bruce some cred. Yeah. Yeah.
And Brian, not Brian, Mike worked with Terry Melchers, so like you literally have about 60 car songs right at your fingertips. Could have done so many things. But Little GTO was fun. And Ballad Betsy, I think that one was interesting. I don't think it's better than the original. But I think the lyrics are a little bit more crisp, so you can kind of hear them a little bit better, which I think is helpful sometimes. I It really sells the Betsy as a car, not as an actual person kind of angle, which was kind of weird when I didn't realize that at first. Um, but
Yeah.
Mike. isn't gonna sing this song better than Brian would. I think Brian would always beat him at the ballads, but I think his voice aged enough where it's better him singing this now than 1963. And it makes
Yes.
it for an enjoyable listen. And it's not, when you have like a pile of shit in front of you, sometimes something's gonna be better. Something has to stand out, and I think this is one of the standouts. And it is an interesting listen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say these are two of the best on the album. Little GTO is cool to hear because it's another one that I don't think it ever got a studio recording other than this. And I kind of like that crazy, like little organ solo thing in the bridge. That's kind of crazy. Pretty fun song. And then I would say Battle of Betsy. I think this works really well because it's Mike singing more tenderly, more like a crooner. Not as much of the nasal, wee, like none of that stuff. It's just simple. He keeps it nice and pretty, and it sounds good. Is it better than Brian's vocal? I would say no, but I think especially for his age and everything, I think it's a very nice vocal. It's a very nice performance from him.
Yeah. Nate, I like the kind of, I don't know when the last time you heard it was, but on Balladable Betsy, like kind of like accordion sound in the background, like
Mhm.
during the verses. I really like that a lot. I don't know like what they were playing with to get that sound, or if it was an actual accordion or what it is, but I really like that a lot. And yeah, I feel like Mike's like aged voice, I feel like gives some of these like more mellow songs, like more emotion, more feeling. I think of something like Daybreak Over the Ocean too, where I think Mike's more aged voice definitely like brings some more, feeling to that one. So I think considering this was originally a Brian lead, I think Mike does a really solid job on that one. And again, I think if you're gonna pick out a few standouts from the album to, be like, hey, there's some decent moments on here, I would say this one and Little GTO would probably be in that category for me. So all right, so we're gonna knock out the final three tracks on the album. And those songs are Little Honda, Fun, 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 and Don't Worry Baby. Little Honda, I literally just wrote exists. I don't have anything else to say about it. It's there. It's Little Honda. Fun, fun, fun. Kind of have similar thoughts about this one to 409. Like, yeah, it's still like it's the usual Beach Boys fun, fun, fun. Probably kind of similar to how you'd hear it live at the time. I don't like how Mike sounds here. There's some parts again, like the way he's singing it, it just sounds a little weird to me. And then Don't Worry Baby. It's honestly not as bad as I remembered. I know there's been some people that have singled out this one as being like especially like terrible. But re-listening to it, it's not great either. The drum intro is kind of funny. It's like very dated. It's like doom, 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 doom. It's like very dated intro. But yeah, it's okay. I think is that Adrian on lead on that one? Nate
Mhm.
on Don't Worry Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think he does a decent job, but obviously it's not, it's not Brian, and when you hear it, you just want to hear the original song. So, but it's a decent way to close the album. So that's about it. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think this version of Little Honda I really dig because it actually does some interesting things with the structure of the song and the arrangement and isn't like a note for note copy. I like the part of this recording where there's like a little like really mini drum solo or more like a drum break where it just for the second just has like the drum beat and the engine revving sounds before it goes into the next verse. And I was like, oh, like that's kind of cool. And I think there's like some modulations in this version that doesn't happen in the original version. So at least they're like trying to kind of reinvent the song and liven up the arrangement a little bit. So I really like that one. Fun, fun, fun. If I'm being totally honest, I like unless I'm listening to this one, I don't remember totally like how it sounds. Like, say what you will about this album, some of the songs or some of the tracks sound really weak, some of them sound really good, but most of them I can actually like remember what they sound like, even if I'm not listening. But this one, I can't really. I just like Jake said, just it's fun, 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 which I do feel this whole album, it's impossible to make me like not enjoy these songs. Like whether I'm hearing Mike and Adrian do the songs or Jane and Dean or Brian did his kind of Don Watts greatest hits album a few years before this. Like I'll love any version of these songs, particularly if it's at least one or some of the Beach Boys doing them. Um, so then yeah, with that said, Don't Worry Baby. I guess I have mixed feelings. This one, at first, I was in the camp of people that were like appalled upon hearing this for the first time. Because there's so much you can say about the original version from David Marks, like lick, the very chink chink that, and the big drums and the so much you can say about that original production. Um, but you got to hand it to the guy. Like Adrian's performance night might not be as moving as Brian's like original performance, but it's technically like an outstanding performance, and he really hits those notes and has a great like little vibrato going, and he has a terrific voice, and it is a good showcase for his vocals, even if it's not um
Yeah.
even if I wouldn't take it over the 64 version.
Yeah. Little Honda impressed me a little bit, like, which is saying about a lot about how deep in the rabbit hole I am that I'm a little impressed by this. I like the energy. It was there. Some of the other covers, fun, fun, fun. And I Get Around, they lacked the energy. And I think Little Honda just had some enough touch to it that it made it a little much better listen. I think that Mike surprisingly nailed the vocal almost. He sounded exactly like his 60s self on that. And I will give him credit where credit is due. Fun, fun, fun. I don't remember how that sounds either. And Don't Worry Baby was Adrian Baker's wet dream come true. Uh, I'm glad he got
As Nate said, the testosterone was just flowing through him on this one.
I'm glad he got his chance to do that. It's inoffensive. It's just, again, I think the thing that kind of upsets me is that nothing special. It's just copying, literally word for word, bar for bar, and note for note, all of these songs. And I think if you want to do a covers album, even if it's covers of your own songs or your touring band's own songs, it's like you do something interesting with it. I mean, I am to play, devil's advocate, impressed that in a time where the internet wasn't huge or as big as it became, where you can get all the arrangements like in front of you, and then you can copy it. I see that like on Instagram all the time, people copying like the arrangements from songs. But, the internet's at your disposal. Am I impressed that he's able to copy this in a time where he probably didn't have all that information in front of him? Yeah, I think
That's
that's
so
impressive.
true.
I think
I
it's
never
really
thought about it
impressive
that
that you
way.
could, figure out all these arrangements just by hearing it. But I am not impressed that he didn't change it at all. Yeah, like if the Beach Boys did, Stars and Stripes and then did their own vocals on top of it, or Mike and Adrian did all their vocals on top of it, then it's like, all right, it's them redoing their songs with a country twang. And that's interesting. What makes this so uninteresting is it's just verbatim, which is just kind of disappointing. But again, it's a gas station CD. So can I really get
Yeah, I
this
was gonna
mad at it?
say, like,
Like, can I really get mad at it? No. It's just when I'm forced to listen to what at this point we did at least 40 albums, if you include some of the solo stuff and all the shit we did. I'm kind of getting tired of it. I'm running out of things to say. I'm like actually in psychosis now.
well, I've had a Riley. I've had a few moments during this episode where like I'm like having like a reality check of like I'm really sitting here like at 11:20 at night, like talking about Salute NASCAR with you guys. Like this is
It's
nuts. Like
12:20 at night and I
holy
have work in the
shit.
morning.
Like this is crazy. Yeah, it's past midnight for you guys. Holy shit.
But, you know, I did want this episode probably more than any of you guys.
Oh no, I wanted it so bad. I
I
think
think if
I've
we
been
did
rooting
this,
for it.
2 years ago, it'd been a lot more interesting.
And Nate sent me like a message, I think last year, like a long like paragraph explaining why the Stars and Stripes episode needs to happen. I saved it. I was like, okay, I'll remember that. I'll remember that.
And I got some conversation out of this, but fuck,
Yeah.
man.
Matt, any thoughts on the closing tracks to this album?
Yeah, sure. So Little Honda, I agree with Riley and Nate that there's some like, it's not like a straightforward cover. It's got some good energy. It's got some cool production choices. Fun, fun, fun is the most forgettable thing. I don't honestly
Yeah.
remember it all. As far as Don't Worry Baby goes, Adrian Baker is not a patch on Brian Wilson. He's not
What about Frankie Valli?
not super well versed in the Four Seasons and all that, but I don't think he's as good as him either. It's fine. It's just I don't know. I just don't feel anything listening to it. It's just like, especially because like I think the original is so moving. This is
Yep.
just whatever.
Yeah, I listened to the original the other day. Like I was watching the Mick the Snare video on the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
And when you go through those videos, you kind of get reminded of a couple of songs that you just really like. And Don't Worry Baby is just I heard it. I actually have the single. So I whipped out the single. I put on my awesome record player, like my real record player, not a suitcase one. And it sounded so beautiful. It was awesome. I was reminded how good it was. And when I listen to this, it's just I'm glad Adrian Baker got to do what he wanted to do. It's whatever.
Nate, don't you wish there was like an alternate reality where like instead of like Stars and Stripes the behind the scenes, we also got like a Salute NASCAR like
Dude,
behind the
that
Oh
would
my
be
scenes?
God, what I would
awesome.
give for that. I know
Like
that
you're
would
in the
be
studio
amazing.
with yeah, Adrian and Mike and like, all right, let's do little GTO. Yeah.
It's
76 will like that one. Yes.
I think it's so funny because like and kind of really sad and heartbreaking. You know, we have all these like footage, whether it's them in the '60s making pet sounds
Yeah.
or even fucking MIU for some reason, and
Dude, I know.
keeping the summer alive.
Yeah, that
And
too. Yes.
you have and even the fucking Stars and Stripes album, you have the
A
five of
full
them.
produced documentary,
Five of
yeah.
them, full produced document, but like just the five of them all together in the studio and you in the session musicians, and it seems so full of life. And imagining them in the 1998, most of that is probably just Adrian Baker by himself or just him and Mike, and it just seems so small and lonely. That's kind of depressing to think about. Um,
Yeah, it does totally like scream like, well, what are we gonna do now? And like, where are we
Yeah.
now? Are we still a band? Is this a solo project? Who is in it? Like, there is this like, I don't even know how to explain it. I think Riley, you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's very happy, and for the most part, both of these albums are like, at the end of the day, kind of a fun listen. But particularly like NASCAR and those Mike ones, there is like a uncanny, I don't want to say sadness, but almost
it's
like a little
lonely,
bit of,
dude. It's lonely. You have
yeah, when you know the context, you can't like separate it from that.
Yeah, and then just imagining these are songs they already recorded as a full band. You have,
Yeah.
even if they were stressful, you have like Brian during I Get Around, and you probably have all the musicians, not just the band, but the Wrecking Crew, and just they were a giant composite, some giant family. Like even the Beatles, like it was mostly just the Beatles and George Martin. But the Beach Boys is
Hmm.
always this big production, and then now it's just one guy doing pretty much all the instruments, and it's him and
Yeah.
Mike doing pretty much all the work. It's just sad to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of, it almost feels like you have to wonder if Mike and Bruce and David, I guess, were almost just doing this to like occupy their minds and like
Yeah.
act like everything was still normal. Like, all right, yeah, let's go to the studio, let's sing these same old songs.
Let's
Like it's
do.
like everything's normal and like not acknowledging all the tragedy that had happened.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Right.
big hint of that. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
funny note, when I was working a job a couple of years ago, I remember I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just sitting down, I had some downtime at work, and I remember I texted Jake, and it was this picture of Adrian Baker's Golden Hits or something. It was him like covering like a bunch of things, but not like 3 seconds. And it was like, dude, this is the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen. But I accidentally texted that to my boss. I texted a picture of Adrian Baker's Golden Hits. That's just the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. And that was to my boss, who was like 2 rooms away from me. So I walked in like 2 minutes later. I'm like, sorry about that, man. He's like, what was that? I'm like, don't worry about it. So you know
How
what?
do
At
you
least
even
we have that.
explain?
At least we have that.
And then along the
Before
lines of like Beach Boys albums that are basically Beach Boys albums, but not quite Beach Boys albums, especially if, we should just briefly, everyone, we don't have to do our track by track, but maybe
We're
we'll just
not doing a
share
track by
our
Wait,
track
Nate,
yeah.
Nate, that's not happening. Don't
I
I
am
worry.
know,
wiped
I know.
out. Wop, 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 wiped out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we should just give our, if anyone has general thoughts either about the symphonic sounds from '98 or the David Beard's California music thing from the COVID era. We can just
Summertime
share our quick
Cruisin.
thoughts.
Summertime Cruisin' too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, that
that's a hell of a name. Uh,
it's like an AI
yeah,
Beach Boys name. If you asked AI,
yeah,
it'd
no,
come up
I
with
think
That
the
Mike just ran out of combinations to make like summer
yeah.
names. So he's just like, still cruising, and then hop fun in the summertime. Summertime cruising.
I was gonna say like that's basically like you might as well just sign Mike Love's name and just say that. I mean that's the most Mike Love title you could possibly.
But
Summertime
dude,
Cruisin.
and listening to the other tracks that I guess were not included on this, they had to do all the Cars songs. When I'm guessing, him and Adrian just had like, I ironically had like a back catalog of just random covers they did for fun, or Adrian did for fun. But Summertime Music, the song,
Banger.
that's a fucking banger, too.
Oh yeah.
What the fuck was that? I thought we were so deep in the rabbit hole that I would never find any song by any of these guys, let alone by Mike Love and Adrian Baker. Like in the deep catalog of music I know from this band, the unhealthy amount of music I've listened to this band, it's probably the last time going through their catalog that I'll ever find a song where it's like, what the fuck? That was pretty fucking good. And Adrian Baker helped write it, but like the music's pretty good. And that's kind of I really like the hook, even though it's kind of reusing the Some of Your Love, the some summertime. But the chord progression is really interesting and it really makes the song. And I think it kind of goes to show like this guy could clearly write a melody. Like, why did he waste it on, you know, a genre that, for better or for worse, kind of died 20 years ago? Like this song, I think was written in 82. Jake sent me this version from Alora that is like really well produced. It's really well produced and it sounds full, and the chord progression's awesome and the melody is really cool. And if this was written by like Brian in the early 60s, it would have been huge. But it's good. It's a good fucking song. I recommend listening to it, and I think Mike sounds pretty good on it too.
Yeah,
Definitely
if
worth it.
anyone listening wants to check it out, yeah, search Summertime Music and you can find it on Alora's channel. There's the final version and this alternate version that has a more like fully produced sound. But like Riley said, it's well produced, really good melody, interesting melody. Like it's not just like a straightforward like surfy song. Like it's actually kind of interesting. It kind of jumps all over the place. The chorus is really catchy, and yeah, it's kind of an earworm. So definitely a kind of a hidden gem that you're only gonna find if you're as deep down the rabbit hole as we are. So,
This is the most rabbit
It
hole we've
is
ever been down, like ever, I
oh
think.
yeah, we're at
Um,
it
the
is a
bottom.
cool
Yeah.
cool testament that even like an album put together by like the remaining members of the band that was recorded to sell at car dealerships still will have like one song where you're like, whoa, like what is
well,
this?
it's
Like,
new. It's new. Like I
yeah,
kind of wish we got that on NASCAR. Like at least, like even if it's well, shit. What's the song Mike Love did for COVID? Like ones of that. Like if it's something new, it's better than just retreading like the old tracks. And
yeah.
dude, in fucking Camp California, the only time we'll ever the only time we'll ever get to talk about this in the history, like, and like any Beach Boys podcast. I think there's only one YouTube video. I still have to watch
We're
it.
breaking ground here.
Yeah, this is like actually like insane that we're talking about this. Camp California is apparently there's supposed to be like this CD-ROM computer video game, and there's a song for it on Summertime Cruisin'. Um, and it's not crazy,
It's
crazy,
so deep down
crazy
the rabbit
sentence.
hole.
I actually have hit psychosis. It's insane that they made a song for a CD-ROM video game, and I don't know if they made it. It was probably like rewritten for it, but that is interesting. Also, it's not good, but it's interesting because the progression's weird. It kind of is just randomly pieced together like Smile in some weird fucked up way. We
Nate,
had to
Nate, Nate,
piece.
Nate, there's the line. Like,
Check.
yeah, call me crazy, but Camp California, I'm kind of hearing some smile elements. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
so
Check that
That's how
box.
deep down the rabbit hole. Like that's how crazy I've gone in the past like day or two listening to this stuff. But it's interesting hearing that. And there's a video out there by some guy. I don't think we're the kind of people that would like link it in the comments, but if you look Camp California Beach Boys video game on YouTube, you're
Yeah.
gonna find it. There's a whole half-hour video on it. I still have to watch it. I want to watch it now that I'm in the headspace for it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
if
so
you
it
ever
was
want to
for
hear how far they sold out, look up Camp California. The
it was for
song's
the
interesting. That's all I
it,
have to say.
it was for the TurboGrafx 16, which I don't think was ever a big seller here in the United States. It was also known as the PC Engine outside of the United
Mm.
States. And this game
The
was
409
at
engine.
Yeah, this game was actually so the first game was called Yo Bro, and then the sequel was called Camp California. So it was apparently a sequel to a game. And the original game was just for the main TurboGrafx. The Beach Boys one was for the TurboGrafx CD-ROM squared. So I mean there's
Imagine if the mental images that Brian got when he took acid that freaked him out so much were glimpses into the future of the Beach Boys Salute NASCAR and the Beach Boys Camp California video game and
That's
yeah, I mean
the official
listen,
mascot of the Beach Boys. Jesus Christ.
let me tell you something.
Wow.
Failed video games of the 90s, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I
Yeah.
mean, Virtual Boy, Apple Bondi Pippin,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, Mike. Personally, I would have called it Camp Kokomo.
yeah, well, he would. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
fuck,
like, I
dude.
agree though that the one song is a highlight. Whatever it was called,
Summertime music, I believe.
yes, that was good. And then I
Yeah.
kind of I enjoyed some of the instrumental stuff, like the orchestral on that album. It
oh, the
was in
symphonic sounds.
yes,
Yeah.
it was interesting to hear like a female voice singing "God Only Knows." I don't know who that is, but it was interesting. Um, But yeah, definitely. I think this is just like there's so many like like odds and ends with this band that it's like it'd be interesting
Well,
if they
wrap it
ever
up
come.
now, dude, because we're running. I'm running out of steam, man.
Me too, but yeah.
If
So
there's
I just
anything, if there's anything else in the rabbit hole, like this is the episode to do it. It's
yeah, no, it's just interesting that there's so much odds and ends. You know what I mean? It's like it would be amazing if they made a box set someday to put everything on there, and it'd probably be like 10,000 tracks or something.
Yeah.
Literally.
we've seen the vaults. They've pretty much been
Oh yeah.
released. It's. Can we talk about how Mike Love re-recorded Kokomo though?
The
Dude, that's
Spanish
your
one, the
song.
Spanish one. Are you talking about the Spanish one that they
Well,
That's
did?
The
the
one
one I'm
I'm
yeah,
working
working
on.
I mean, like with Adrian Baker, like, dude, that's your song.
on.
Like, there's nothing holding you back from that.
Yeah, it's such a strange trip. I guess the symphonic sounds for me is actually like pretty like high like bar and like it keeps up with the standard of like expecting pretty like great arranging and production from the Beach Boys. I think Bruce did a really good job and it's actually cool that it was recorded at Abbey Road. So it's kind of neat to know that the Beach Boys have a project where the Beatles recorded.
Well, yeah,
Um,
back in the USSR too.
you're right. And so
Written
yeah,
by
for me
Mike Love.
the symphonic album ranges from like some of the songs to me are again passable, but maybe not super memorable. But
Yeah.
yeah, the purely orchestra sections are like really breathtaking and really well done. And I even like the version of Disney Girls on here. I think is great, and the Warmth of the Sun a cappella I thought was interesting. Um, but yeah, this one to me is very, very Bruce, and it was
Oh
Bruce's
yeah.
passion project all the way through, and it just another sort of glimpse into the whole like what Bruce sees the Beach Boys as, which is like kind of NASCAR is almost like in Summertime Cruisin' is like Mike's vision of the Beach Boys in a way, like all the fun in the sun and surfing and all that.
And Song of Summer.
And then this is like Bruce's perspective of the band where it's literally classical music and it's all about the harmonies and the arrangements and the counterpoint and the melodies. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And then real quick, about David Beard's album, um, I remember when we were smack dab in the middle of the lockdown and COVID and everything, and it was so dreary and so depressing and frightening. Um, and to all of a sudden find out that there was like basically a new Beach Boys album coming out, minus Brian. And so they didn't call it the Beach Boys, they called it California Music. But you had new stuff from Mike, new stuff from Bruce, new stuff from Al and Larry, and you had Carney and Wendy and Christian and just, like the whole family getting together and singing. And it was such a like ray of sunshine and like I remember it was just so nice to have something to look forward to during that time because it's like the whole world stood still. And it was so nice to be like, oh wow, like a new Beach Boys album. Like cool. Like I finally have something to look forward to during this fucked up time. So,
Yeah.
like some of the albums to me or some of the songs on there, there's a lot of re-records or like, Jeff Vasquez and songs that aren't by the Beach Boys per se, but by like friends of the Beach Boys. But it works. And for me, it actually that one feels like a really cool like epilogue to That's Why God Made the Radio. Like, of course it's not the Beach Boys, but it's, kind of like a one last hurrah for most of those musicians. So I'm glad it exists.
Unrelated, but you know what I was just thinking of? Like if in another universe, like the Beach Boy, like or Mike and Bruce did this NASCAR album, but they actually like wrote like original songs like about NASCAR, or they rewrote like changed the lyrics to some of the hits
From
to make
Johnny
them
Carson to like Jeff
like,
Till
Gordon.
I Drive.
Jeff Gordon, and then like for Little Honda, it's like I turn left, I turn left, something like that, you know. But no, I like the Johnny Carson, Jeff Gordon idea. That's good. I like
You should
that.
do that.
Yeah.
Get your violin out, dude.
All right. So thank you everybody for listening to the 69th episode of Good Timin. I hope you all
Wall of
enjoyed the
Fame.
show. I had a really great time discussing these two albums of all time with you guys, and I hope everyone listening took away something from our discussions as well. So before we wrap up, I did want to make an important announcement regarding the future of the podcast. After a lot of thought and consideration these past couple of months, we've decided that our next episode, which also happens to be our 70th show, will be the final official episode of Good Timin'. So I've had an absolute blast doing this podcast with you guys for the past 3 years, and we've shared so many great discussions and memories, both as a group and with all of you listening. But with how much of the band's music and history we've already covered on this show, along with just being in different places in each of our lives, the timing just felt right to wrap things up here. So I know this may be a bit of a bummer to some of you longtime listeners, but just know that we'll still be around, and who knows, maybe you'll hear from us again in some capacity even after that final episode. So in the meantime, though, stay tuned for more updates from us, and we're looking forward to joining you all one last time in a few months. So as always, if you like this podcast and enjoyed our discussion, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support, as it's what's motivated us to keep the show going as long as we have. Also, as a reminder, the Good Timin' podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So there's plenty of different places to listen and keep up with the show. So thank you again, everybody, for listening. And we hope this episode brought you as many good vibrations as a checkered flag at Daytona Beach. Bye-bye.